What does creative writing mean to you? I'm Kaufman, and I'm on a mission to connect with every creative writer in the world. But I need your help.
It's our duty. No, it's our responsibility to inspire creativity.
My creative writing tips, tricks, and strategies are gonna help you become a better writer, so that way you can beat procrastination. The writing process can be so expensive. I get it, especially if you're writing as a hobby, but you really wanna get your story published. I'm actually doing a 30 to 60% discount on all writing services, writing, coaching, and editing to help you finish your story. Email me or click on the link and let's set up a consult right now. Join me on this journey to unite the creative writing industry
And let's inspire creativity in the world together.
and help creative writers everywhere craft stories that can change the world. So I ask you this again, what does creative writing mean to you? And we are live. Welcome to the Story and Critique Show, a live workshop experience where writers from the community will submit their stories for a live reading and critiques. I am so excited. This is one of our most popular streams. I'm your host, Kaufman, and we're starting right now. All right. And by the way, if you're watching on the replay, I've got you covered. At the end of the stream, the time codes get added to help you jump to the part of the video that bring you the most value. So if you've submitted a story, or if you're like, you know what, I just like that one story and I really want to listen to it again, you can hop to it and it'll be all set for you. All right, and let's hop into the comments. Glide, welcome to the stream, my friend. You got right at the front row. Welcome. Looking forward to your story. Eli, welcome. And Jessica, what's up? Welcome to the stream. And John, welcome to you, my friend. You get 3 welcomes today. What's up, guys? Good to see all you here. And Steph, what's up? Welcome to the stream. Happy to see all of you guys in the stream. It's a holiday weekend. Hopefully we're getting some good writing in, maybe some good reading, good writing, some good everything. Happy to see all you guys. I got a lot of your submissions and we're going to be hopping right into it. So to start off the stream, this is probably the highest number of submissions I've received for a show, and the majority of them actually came in last week. So make sure that if you want your story read, I don't need that banner. Make sure that if you want your story read, to submit an excerpt to the email below, kaufman@thecreativeghost.com. For a story submission, simply send the excerpt. Let me know the name of the story or the name of the story excerpt along with the genre, and I'll let you know if I have any formatting specifications. All right, so we will do that. And let's get into our submission process. And I almost forgot. If you stick around till the end of the video, we'll actually be doing our daily writing sprint. So if you're feeling super creative and you're like, hey, this is a holiday weekend, let's get some writing in, I'll be doing it. Depending on how long the readings take, we'll see how much of a sprint we have. But the point of the story that I'm in with Last Scarecrow, so exciting. So we'll hop into that after the readings. And we are here, the live story readings and critiques. So just, let's see, let me pull up number 1. So the first reading I'm going to have on deck, Stephanie, I'll have your reading on deck, Redfire by Stephanie Pilz. So while I queue up your story stuff, for our live story readings and critiques, just a couple of housekeeping rules for the submission process. So for each story, I reformat what writers submit based on to make it easier for the streaming experience. So the words, the font is generally going to be blown up and made easier so that way you can read along. And then every story I go over receives 20 minutes of time. You'll get a 10-minute reading and then a 10-minute critique. So I try to make sure I can get through as many stories as possible. And then let's see, the formatting and the time are perfect. And I'll actually throw this up over here. So you can see on your end, that's not what we want. There we go. So I actually throw up some critique guidelines. You're encouraged to join in on the critique if there's anything that stands out to you. If there's something that you really like, something that sounds either really cool or like, hey, maybe they could be improved upon, drop it in the comments. Definitely drop it in the comments. And I think generally specifying which part of the story it is can sometimes help the writer. So definitely feel free to join along. Absolutely. The more engagement, the more feedback that we get, the more engagement you'll get for your stories as well. I find it's always a good community experience. All right. And let's see what we got. So I'm hopping straight into the critique today. All right. So I think that's everything that I got on my end. All right, perfect. So I got you up over here, Stephanie, for Redfire, and I'll drop that as the banner. There we go. Perfect. So I am all set on my end. I got 20 minutes on the clock, and we're going to hop straight into it. All right. So we got Redfire, Chapter 1 by Stephanie Pilz. I never believed in the existence of witches or vampires, or anything really that had to do with magic. I always thought that sort of stuff wasn't real. I thought that these things only existed in books that I've read, TVs, or movies that I've seen. I also thought that if they were real, I would never meet one in my life. I certainly never thought I would be a witch or that my boyfriend Damien would turn out to be a real vampire, things and all. This all sounds crazy, right? How could this be my life? The night my mother was murdered was when my entire life changed. I found out that the world isn't as it seems to be. It went from being a normal teenage girl to being a powerful witch, wielded a powerful soul amulet called the Redfire. I was now stuck in between a war of witches and vampires. I'd also learned that there's magic in everything, even if some can't see it. The day I found out that my boyfriend was a vampire, and not just a myth, when his brother tried to force me to join him against my will. With the Redfire and Damien's help, I was able to get away. Oof. I ran all the way home, hoping that I'd be safe there. When I saw that my house was coming into view, I couldn't stop myself from looking behind me. I was scared because I saw that someone was following me. I ran faster to get home and get away from them. As I ran into the house, I prayed that this was all just a bad dream. On the other side of the door was my father and stepmother. I thought that this was very weird. At first, I was glad to see them, but then I noticed the way they were looking at me. There was just an odd look on their faces. What's wrong? The sound of my father's voice was off. I knew that there was just something very wrong with him. Nothing much. Damien's brother just attacked me because I had the red fire. I think that someone was chasing after me. I was shocked at their reaction to this news. I wasn't expecting them to start laughing in my face. I was scared and I was being completely serious with them. And they were still laughing at me like I was telling them a joke or something. What's so funny? I'm telling you the truth. I know that you're telling the truth. I just think that it's funny you came back here to the two people under my control. You stupid girl. I will just have them keep you busy until I get there because I know that you won't hurt them. See you soon, little one. I heard Nicholas's voice coming out of my father's mouth. I was shocked to hear that, and I noticed that their eyes were white. They started to walk closer to me. As they did this, I noticed that they were carrying baseball bats in their steady hands. Then they started to swing the bats at me with great force. They seemed to be trying to knock me unconscious. I didn't know why they were doing this for. As I was dodging their attack on me, I saw the red fire was starting to glow blue. Then ice started to come out of my raised hands. I watched in horror as I froze my parents in ice. The next thing I knew, someone opened the door behind me. As I was about to run for the back, as I was about to run for the back door, I saw that it was Jade. I didn't know what to do. I just wanted to be safe so that Nicholas couldn't find me. So Jade told me that I'd be safe at her house. Before I get ahead of myself, I'll get to the rest of this later. But first, let me tell you how this all started. End reading. Woo, that was a nice little reading, actually. That was a nice little fantasy, little like vampire fantasy intro. I think you mentioned maybe werewolves as well, but I definitely heard, I think you said magic in general. The day that I found out vampire witches and vampires. That is so cool. Oh my goodness. I like absolutely love the beginning of the story. It kind of gives me the vibes. Like I haven't read too many vampire stuff. I'm actually just watching right now the Interview with the Vampire series and all that Anne Rice stuff. But I remember reading that when I was younger. But this definitely kind of gives me a similar-ish vibe to some of like that the modern day vampire. What's that? I forgot what that one vampire show was with all the spinoffs. But yeah, that gives me a very reminiscent feel of, oh shoot, what's that vampire show called? It's gonna bug me. Vampire shows. Not Vampire Diaries. Definitely gives me a very, very reminiscent feel of the Vampire Diaries for sure. I was like, yeah, and I think that's actually what I really liked about it. And then you've created intrigue around this concept of the Redfire. It's like this amulet, which is super cool. I'm like very, very intrigued. I think just from this initial part, you have a really good opening for the outline. And I can tell that you have an overall plot for the story, which is super cool. I could tell that it was definitely really interesting. Like I'm very intrigued by the characters. And I definitely like I want to know more about the story now. And it's like when she got to the house with the parents, like I had a feeling I'm like something's wrong with the parents. Like, of course they're under another vampire's control. Like, of course. Absolutely. John, I saw that you mentioned Buffy, but that's like totally gave me Buffy the Vampire Slayer vibes. Oh, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Buffy, Angel, that universe. Absolutely was such a fan at the time. Absolutely loved that like corny vampire genre early on back in the 90s. So I wouldn't say that this is really corny per se. This is definitely, you can tell it's a much more dramatic vibe, but I'm definitely really, really intrigued by it. Yeah, I think what intrigues me the most is the world. So when I think about what works, well, let's hop into it. So when I think about what works the best, I would say the world building right now is extremely intriguing. The plot, there's not enough there yet for us to really determine whether or not the plot is working, but I'm extremely intrigued by it. After reading this first section, I want to know I want to know more about the plot. You've done a lot of really good foreshadowing work, and you've done enough to keep me intrigued. As a hook, it works very, very well. So really great job. I think the biggest opportunity, I don't think there's really, I think really the biggest opportunity would be in, maybe the character development potentially. I think it's a little the character development would be the opportunity, but I think it's more the descriptions behind the action, what's going on, than anything. I think it's just fine tuning and adding some more descriptive elements to make some of the actions really stand out. Let's see. Yeah, I actually completely agree with you, Eli. The namesake of the story introduced, so like using the namesake Redfire as the intrigue to bring people in, absolutely, absolutely a really great strategy. I think that was a very, very good, very, very good choice on your part. Because just like Redfire, I'm like, what's Redfire? And actually, Steph, I feel like to draw people in, you're really going to have some really cool, a really cool cover art that focuses on the Redfire amulet or some type of effect of the Redfire amulet. So I think that's what's really going to help sell the book when you get it to publication. Interesting. Okay. So it's not like the concept where with a lot of the vampire mythos, especially like a lot of the Anne Rice stuff, a lot of I think it's True Blood as well, a lot and Vampire Diaries. You usually become a vampire as a result of somebody turning you. I think that's super cool that you're creating a world where they're born as a vampire. And I think that gives the vampire mythology, that's like a whole different type of vampire, which is intriguing. I absolutely love that. So I think that in itself is an interesting world building mechanic that's unique to your story. Like I said, I haven't read too many vampire stories lately, so I'm not sure if it's a trend, but that's super cool. The cover, okay, perfect. That's kind of what I figured. Awesome. So let's get into some of the minutia of it. So when I think of the beginnings, I never believed in the existence. I love the opening, by the way. Absolutely love the opening. I thought that these things only existed in books that I've read, TV, or movies that I've seen. I absolutely love that. I think that's really, really good. I think it's very straightforward and simple. And I think that's what works very well for it. Let's see. I would never meet one in my life. I certainly never thought I would be a witch. So, like, the witch thing is interesting, and we get a hint. We get a little bit of a taste with the when she holds the amulet after with the parents setting. Yeah, I would say the opening is definitely very strong. Now, let's see. I think I want to say that it was Glide brought up an interesting thing. Glad, I'm pretty sure this is definitely chapter one, but you brought up an interesting point with some characters. Now, I don't necessarily think that there's too many characters in the first chapter personally, but I think because there's so much action going on, you have touched upon a lot of names. I think I think adding some additional description can help uh, track us and help us stay cemented in which characters are the most important to the reader. Because I feel like a lot of the characters you've mentioned are important to the world and are going to become important characters in a little bit shortly, and probably like the next couple of chapters. Let's see. I would never meet one in my life. Let's see. We go back. The boyfriend, Damien, would turn out to be a real vampire fangs. It's interesting. I know you said it's not like anything, but for some reason, when we think of a boyfriend as a vampire, it definitely makes me think of Twilight or or Vampire Diaries, because the vampire guy is always the boyfriend. I don't know if that's just me. It could just be a thing. Let's see. Damien would turn out to be a real vampire. This all sounds crazy, right? So, Stephanie, my recommendation for each character that you introduce, so we can get, because you're not really introducing the character fully yet. You're kind of just introducing them as part of like an intrigue. I would recommend for something like this. So beyond Damien being the boyfriend vampire, right? That's basically all that we know about him right now. I would recommend adding an additional description, even if it's short, using it as foreshadowing and giving us something unique about Damien. Because just knowing that Damien is the vampire boyfriend, like, interesting, but anybody who's read vampire mythology, like, that doesn't make him stand out yet. And I think it would be cool to have some type of like intrigue, like, what about Damien? I would use like a foreshadowing element about like maybe what is one of Damien's core weaknesses as a character that he has to overcome throughout the story, or maybe a physical trait that makes him really stand out. So, like, if that were me, I would say, or that my boyfriend Damien would turn out to be a real vampire, fangs, and this the perfect point would be vampire fangs. What would be something unique? Fangs, leather jacket is so overplayed for vampires. Fangs, this is where I would give some details. I'm trying to brainstorm something cool on the spot. I would say fangs, emerald. I don't know why emerald. Fangs, emerald jacket. I was like, I don't know where emerald came from. Clearly, that's what we're doing. Fangs, emerald jacket, and fire red, ruby red eyes, and all. Right. And that's just an example that I would want to give just a little bit more of an intrigue. You don't have to do that. You could only really do one thing, but I think just something that gives an image or an indication of who Damien is. But beyond that, that's good. The night my mother was murdered was my entire life changed. I found out that the world isn't as it seems. Yep, wielded. So this is good. Like, this is all just set up. I like this. This is perfect. This is great world building. You're doing an intro to the world, but you don't have to go too in depth yet, which works. And I think it keeps the action going, which is great. Yeah, I completely agree with Eli. I think what works the best about this, Stephanie, is because it's straightforward. It works out really well. Let's see. Let's see. And then we get to the day. He talks about the boyfriend with the Redfire. Forced me to join him against my will with the Redfire. This is the first instance we get of the Redfire with the Redfire and Damien's help. I think it's actually brilliant that you don't actually describe it yet. I think this works as really good foreshadowing. I absolutely love that. Let's see. I ran all the way home hoping that and Damien's help, I was okay. And then you touch upon his brother. When his brother tried to force me to join him against my will. The day I found out that my boyfriend was a vampire, not just a myth. When his brother tried to force me. So when you do the brother thing, once again, that makes me think of Vampire Diaries because it's always two brothers. Same exact thing with the other vampire. For some reason, it's always brothers as vampires. And that might not just be a me thing. I think, Stephanie, that'd just be something to keep in mind that most readers who are coming into your story, they're going to be aware of whatever popular vampire shows they've seen and or vampire books. So it's just something to be aware of in the back of your mind as you're working on this. His brother. I was like, why make it his brother? Why, unless it's like important to the story, like why not make it like a friend or a cousin or when his father? Something, but unless it's like a core part of the story, just some recommendations to spice it up. And his brother tried to force me to join him against my will. I kind of go back and forth on whether or not we need a little more description for this character. Maybe when his brother tried to force me to join him against my will. When his brother tried to force me to join him against my will. The day I found out that my boyfriend was a vampire, not just a myth. When his brother tried to force me to join him against my will. With the Redfire and Damien's help, I was able to get away. Yeah, I was like, I kind of go back and forth on if it could use a little bit more description for the brother. I'm neutral on that part. On one hand, I'm like, all right, well, let's like give a little bit more setup for the brother. But on the other hand, I'm like, I like that it keeps the pace going because it goes right to the Redfire and Damien. So I'm kind of neutral on that part. Gotcha. Okay, perfect. So that's a core part of the story as the brother's the vampire king. Cool. Thanks for the heads up. All right. So then we get home. Let's see. So like that action is fine. I think the biggest thing that I would suggest with the home thing, I think with the home portion of it, I think we just what you're doing with it works. I think you just need to add some additional descriptions on some of the actions to make a couple things clearer. Let's see. As I ran to the house, I prayed that this was all just a bad dream. Perfect. On the other side of the door is my father and stepmother. As I ran to the house, I prayed that this was all just a bad dream. On the other side of the door, I think I would just add an additional sentence here to further clarify this, to make this action a little bit clearer. So as I ran to the house, I prayed that this was all just a bad dream. I slammed the door. Like what I would do is I would say I slammed the door and immediately heard my father and stepmother on the other side. I think I would just make that a little. I pray that this is all just a bad dream on the other side of the door. Yeah, I would just clarify this action a little bit by adding something between running into the house and being in the room. And then this is a perfect example. I would suggest use some of her other senses to describe. Like, I heard my stepfather's normal. I could smell his cologne that he always wore, or I could smell my mother's perfume, or I could hear them murmuring under their breath like they always do. Right? I think that would be a good opportunity to do to subvert expectations, right? Because you're doing that already, but to further add, like, oh, it's just them being themselves, right? Add some sort of detail that makes the reader think, yeah, it's just the parents being stupid. Because right now, I think I was able to pick up on it a little too much, that like, okay, something's wrong. Make them seem as normal as possible until they have their speaking moment in the next couple paragraphs. At first, I was glad to see them, but then I noticed the way they were looking at me. So this was what was confusing, right? Because first you said they're on the other side of the door, but then you said that they're looking at her. So I think you just need to, I think I would split this into 2 paragraphs. I would have the first one introducing her running in, slamming the door, then being on the other side. And then I think it'd be cool for her opening it slowly and her seeing the way they're looking at her. There was just an odd look on their faces. What's wrong? The sound of my father's voice. I knew that was just something very wrong about him. And this would be a good example of, I want to see a little bit more showing in this one, right? So the sound of my father's voice was off. I knew that there was just something very wrong about him. What was wrong about his voice? Instead of saying that I knew that, have her be like, the way he said does. He didn't slur his does and ands. He didn't he didn't draw off at the end of a sentence like he usually did, or just anything would work, but give some type of example. What's wrong? He said in a monotone voice that made me what's wrong? He said in a monotone voice. I knew that something what's wrong? He said in a monotone voice. I knew something, I could tell something was off, right? So we get a little bit more of a description to indicate why she thinks that the voice is off. And then nothing much. Damien's brother just attacked me. Yep, that's good. I would just give her a little bit more action so that way I know, like, what is she doing while she's saying this? But that description is good. I was shocked at their reaction. I would actually say what is their reaction, right? How are they reacting? They stared monotonously at me. I was shocked at this reaction. I was expecting them to start laughing in my face. I was scared. I was being completely serious with them, and they were still laughing. Yeah, so I think this is why I was like, after me, they immediately broke out into laughter. You'd be like, wait, what? And I think that would just make it a little clearer. Like, tell me what they do specifically. So that makes this reaction. I'm like, wait, what? Why the heck are they laughing at her? They're like, are they abusive parents? I think it would be better to almost suggest that there's something wrong. That the fault with them is a result of them as people, right? Because you want to suggest that so that way the reader's like, oh, okay, they're just bad parents, or maybe they're abusive or something like that. So then it makes us get to this next punch of like, oh shit, they're actually under the control of the evil vampire dude. And they were still laughing at me. What's so funny? I'm telling you the truth. Perfect. Without going into detail, I think just editing this, I think just the dialogue just needs a little line editing, just a little bit. The voice. Nicholas. Who's Nicholas? Is Nicholas the brother? Because we haven't heard this name yet. I heard Nicholas's voice. We need some type of setup for who Nicholas is. Even if, okay, so Nicholas is the brother. So make sure that if Nicholas is the brother, you set up his name when you mentioned the brother earlier. Only because the reader right now isn't clear and like, okay, was that the brother or is that a new guy? So just to be clear, I think like I could get it, but once again, we want to make it as easy as possible to be a reader, and I don't want to chance your reader being lost. And I noticed their eyes were white. So this was another question to ask myself. If she noticed their eyes were white just now, hasn't she been looking at them for the past like couple minutes since they've come into the room? Did their eyes just like suddenly become white, or have they been white the entire time? So I would say either one of two ways. Either A, have their eyes be white the moment she sees them and have her ask like, hey, what's wrong with your eyes? Or have their eyes gloss over being white once they start talking. So just make that a little clearer, because then you can tell, right? Once they start seeing this, like, okay, yeah, the parents are effed. Good luck. Goodbye, parents. Nice knowing you. We got another Buffy situation over here. Let's see. They started to walk as I did this, and they were carrying baseball bats. And with this, I would say, how did she not notice they were carrying the baseball bats before? My guess is like, were they holding the bats behind their backs? And as they did that, as they walked closer to me, each pulled a baseball bat from behind their back. There you go. So that would just make that a little closer, or make that a little clearer. I'm like, oh God, they're about to like try to like beat the heck out of her. That's not good. As I was dodging their attack on me, they seemed to be trying to knock me unconscious. Good. As dodging, I saw the red fire was starting to glow blue. Then ice started to come out of my raised hands. I watched in horror as I froze my parents in ice. Give me a little bit more description on what the I love this. I saw the red fire starting to glow blue. Then ice started to come out of my raised hands. Give me a little bit more of the senses. How does it feel? Is it cold? How does ice, how does snow, what does it sound like? Because the red fire is such an important part of the story. I want to like visualize like this like cool, like she opens the red fire glows and this like storm of like ice comes out and like encases both of her parents. I think some description there would be super cool, because I want the red fire to come across as like the coolest thing I've ever read. And I think this is for an initial opportunity to do so. I saw that it was Jade. And then once again, right? So we're introducing a new character, and I just don't know who Jade is. I don't know. And I just wanted so that Nicholas could. So Jade told me that I'd be safe at her house. As I was about to run for the back door, I saw that it was Jade. Is Jade another vampire? Is she a best friend? So I think just once again, it'd be setting up. Like, I'm not opposed to you introducing all the characters. I'm actually fine with it, because your action, you have a lot going on. You just got to make sure that you give enough setup for them is all. But yeah, that's all that I got for you, Stephanie. Overall, though, really cool story. Really, really cool. I'm absolutely intrigued, and I would absolutely read this type of story. So once again, really, really great work. I'm definitely eager to read more. I'm also curious. I know we read another excerpt of Redfire. That excerpt was the prologue, right? I'm pretty sure we read an excerpt maybe about a month back, and I'm pretty sure that excerpt was the prologue. Yeah, okay, cool. I was like, that's actually super cool. So then the prologue is setting up like this grand thing with the gods, and the story is that's awesome. I'm in love with the story, Stephanie. This is super cool. Thanks for sharing. Yeah, there's Eli brings up another good point. Why did she think the parents were trying to knock her unconscious, right? If they bring out bats and she's never seen bats, I would think that they would want to kill me, right? So they seem to be trying to knock me unconscious. This feels like that you, the author, are trying to tell that to the reader. So I would say they swung their bats at me with great force, like they were trying to knock me out, or like they were trying to kill me. Actually, I would just even leave that part out. I actually don't even think that's necessary. They started to swing bats at me with great force. The reader can assume like, okay, they're trying to do some damage to her regardless. I didn't know what they were doing this for. Yeah, I think that'd be stronger just cutting that. Absolutely. Yeah, like that could be another thing, right? Is there a possibility that they're holding back? Something really interesting to think about. Absolutely. Thanks for sharing that, Elon. Awesome. Really great first story. Thanks for sharing stuff. Absolutely love it. Love it. That was really cool. I always love I think right now, because I'm just watching Interview with a Vampire, I'm just like, then I get into the whole like fantasy vibe and the whole vampire werewolf, that like supernatural vibe, which is super cool. Awesome. And let's see what we got. So that was super cool. Let's see. Next story I got on deck is Cristina Umpfenbach-Smyth, an excerpt from Childhood Memories by Cristina Umpfenbach-Smyth. I got your story next on deck. So I'll be starting with that one shortly. Cristina, if you're here in the stream, just drop a comment. Let me know that you're here. And I'll be getting to yours in just a moment. All right. And by the way, if you want a live story reading and critique, make sure to send the excerpt to Kaufman at thecreativeghost.com. It's like, wait, hold on. Was I saying that? Kaufman at thecreativeghost.com. So make sure to email that if you want an excerpt of your story read aloud. All right. All right. So beautiful. Absolutely love that. All right. So I got that one on deck. That was really cool. Make sure you send that excerpt if you enjoyed it. And by the way, let's say I got yours queued up, Cristina. And yeah, by the way, if you find value from this stream, follow and subscribe. I do daily live streams. Monday through Friday is our Casual Kaufman Writes writers group where we do workshops, we do writing sprints, and we do all the fun stuff. And then Saturday, our story and critique show. And Sunday is our Creative Right Now podcast. But for tomorrow's stream, we're going to be doing another episode of Storytime, where I'll be doing a live story reading from a best-selling book, and we'll maybe pull up some milk and cookies and a pillow fort. So it'll be super fun. It'll be casual. So make sure that if you're subscribed, you'll be alerted when I go live. All right. So I got childhood memories here from Cristina. Let's see. And I got hers set up right here. All right, perfect. Here we go. So I got you all set up here on deck. And then let me just make sure. Got to check my messages. As I'm live, I have to make sure that I don't miss things if anyone messages me outside of the stream. Okay. So I am all set on my end. Perfect. Stephanie, you made another note. This has been very helpful. And this was not how the published version started. And I'm happy going back to the original beginning version of the story. Yeah, Stephanie, that was a really cool start to the story. Like, this was a really, really cool start. Yeah, I was super intrigued. And the reason it works is because it's starting off with action. It's starting off with being present in the moment when things are happening. That is why it works. The writing is straightforward and it immediately pulls the reader in because they want to know what is the Redfire. So that's why this beginning, that first chapter, works really well as an intro. Absolutely. It's almost interesting. I would almost wonder if that chapter 1 would be stronger to start the book off and have that intro, the prologue that we had gone over previously, to have that be a story that she's told in like chapter 2, 3, or 4. I almost wonder if this chapter 1 might be a little stronger, but I could go back and forth. That's entirely subjective on my part. Okay, so we got childhood memories. I got 20 minutes on the clock. Perfect, and I am all set. Childhood Memories by Cristina Umpfenbach-Smyth. We descend the local train, which connects the villages in the Wielkopolski region of Poland. A sleigh waits for us, drawn by Pegasus and Petronius, two A sleigh waits for us, drawn by Pegasus and Petronius, two chestnut riding horses, demoted to pulling conveyances. They are Arabians for my uncle's stud, of which there is nothing left but these two survivors facing a dim future. Cars, horses, livestock no longer are personal possessions, but belong to the Reich, used in the war effort. It is the end of 1943 in occupied Poland, the corridor the Germans call Warthegau, an area in dispute over centuries with ever-changing boundaries and alliances. Mr. Novak, the man who ran the stud at Arkugowo, is now accountable to the authorities for cows, pigs, chickens, eggs, and any edibles at the estate. Mr. Novak helps Mother into the sleigh. Her belly is bulging with the siblings soon to arrive. My sister and I jump in and huddle under fur covers. Snowflakes cling to our eyelashes. In the west, sun lingers red on the horizon. Darkness creeps up from the east. A pale moon hangs over a stand of naked birches. A flock of crows takes flight. Petronius and Pegasus in motion, we glide along the path, invisible under the glistening snow. Sleigh bells jingle a happy tune. Coach lights cast shadows. Hollow trees along the road harbor nebulous spirits. White owls of my imagination fly among the trees, barely moving their wings. Mom takes my hand under the cover and puts it on her belly. I feel the baby move. I know we will have a brother. The house appears behind barren trees, two towers stark against the sky. A picture from the dark tales of the Brothers Grimm. No lights, no light greets. No light greets us. The order for absolute darkness mandates that drapes and shades are drawn. We rush in, go to our room, and are served dinner of roast chicken and potatoes. To our disappointment, no dessert. Uncle Wenzel has not come to greet us. Mother joins people gathered in the library. Our room is cold. No fire in the big corner tile stove reaching almost to the ceiling. A small electric heater struggles to cast warmth. We find hot bricks wrapped in towels under the covers at the foot of our bed. The visit to the freezing bathroom only as long as absolutely necessary. We huddle in bed, rub our feet against the warm brick. My sister is quiet. I am too young to understand what is going on. I sense a change, uneasiness carried by the adults. I wish my dad and my older sister Lilo were with us. We are still awake when Mother joins us in the big bed. Her presence reassuring, we finally fall asleep. It is the last time we visit Arkugowo. 1944 passes like flash fiction. February sees the arrival of our brother Peter. Dad comes from his post in Croatia for a few days. During his stay, we have a night visitor. It is Uncle Wenzel. It is a secret, and we are told not to speak about it. Mother says the walls have ears. I'm not sure what to make of that. Bozena, the young woman who has been our housekeeper, moves in with us and minds me and Peter. I miss my sisters, my papa, my muti. Carola was sent to a youth orientation program and had to report for work on a farm given to German settlers. Mother is working for the Red Cross. She is at the train station dispensing water and kind words to wounded and dying soldiers. Returning from the Eastern Front in cattle cars, Lilo is on her post in Posen and Papa far away in a place called Croatia. I feel abandoned. We are to move to Frankfurt, Mother's hometown, to live with Aunt Sonia. Mother packs her beloved Hutchenreiter china. Crates fill with our belongings, but remain in the living room. We do not get permission to ship them, and no permission to leave. Carola comes home at Christmas after a month, in hospital with scarlet fever. Mother was never told that she was ill. Ugh. On January 1945, we get marching orders from the government. All German nationals have to leave. Mother packs a suitcase and backpacks, makes sure that the beds are made, and locks the door. It is negative 10 degrees Fahrenheit as we walk to the train station. The train moves along. No lights in the compartments, none to be seen outside, just darkness. Snowfall obliterates any shine of moon or stars. Huddled against Mother, I enjoy the warmth from the radiator. Oh, I fall asleep. Screeching sounds wake me as the train comes to a sudden halt. Light from a starry sky reflects on a treeless, snow-covered flat landscape outside the window. We have been riding for hours. Guards come to the cars, shout, "Everyone has to get off!" We bundle up. Carola grabs her backpacks. I grab my doll. Mom carries Peter. We slide down a snowy embankment. Why can't we go on to Frankfurt and the aunts? My sister whispers that the train cannot pull into Berlin. The city was bombed and is burning. We see the red and orange glow at the horizon, like a brilliant sunset. Where is my sister, Lilo? Horse-drawn hay wagons are lined up on the narrow path which runs parallel to the railroad tracks. Shouts and wails can be heard from the group of Black Sea refugees, spilling like black shadows from the cattle cars. Carola tells me, "Some babies froze to death." I quickly stick my hand into the bundle that is Peter. He moves. Organs are given loudly. We climb onto one of the wagons along with other women and children. For a moment, I'm reminded of our sleigh rides in Arkugowo. But there are no bells here. No cuddling under fur covers. A short trot, and we unload in front of a barn, are rushed into the dimly lit interior. Our group of women and some older men are waiting. We line up in family groups. A youngish woman comes towards us, greets us. "I am Lena Garber. I'd like you to come to my place, but I only have room for 2 and the baby. I'll talk to Hirmara. Maybe he will take your oldest girl." She sounds friendly and smiles, waves to a man. Here Mar comes over. The sleeve of his right arm is empty and pinned up. He walks with the cane. I think of him as another of the incomplete stickmen, like the ones I saw at the train station in Nessen, missing arms and legs. Here Mar looks at my sister. "She is welcome. She'll be safe with me and my wife." Mama hugs Carola, reassures her that all will be fine. I hug my sis, don't want to let go of her. She taps me on the head. "Be good," she says. Lena has a little wagon outside with enough room for Mom's backpack and Peter. We start making our way in the starlit night in deep, crunchy snow. Around us, everything is monochromatic. Shadows from the lightest gray to the darkest black cast bizarre, angular forms on the bright white canvas of snow. The night swallows color. I think of my white owls in Arkugowo. There are no trees here for them to fly through. We pass through a small hamlet. Lena explains it is Gross Zeicht. She points to the mayor's house where my sister will stay. We arrive at a one-story building with several out. We arrive at a one-story building. We arrive at a one-story building with several outbuildings, the farm where Lena lives. We enter a room with a low ceiling. A big tile stove in the corner throws of heat. An old woman sits by the stove, warming her back. She gives us the uninvited, the intruders, the evil eye. She stares at me as if I was something dirty and undesirable. I stick my tongue out at her. She responds in kind. During our 3-day stay at the farm, this is how she and I greet each other. I am careful not to get caught. I hear Lena say to her sister, Elsie, "What's with Mother sticking her tongue out at that child?" Besides the old woman and her daughters, Lena and Elsie, 2 French prisoners of war on work duty, are resident on the farm. Elsa's husband is fighting in Normandy. 2 brothers are in Russia. I think Paul, one of the Frenchmen, is Lena's husband. They share a bedroom, and I saw them kiss. The other prisoner is Sebastian. He plays the harmonica and sleeps in the barn. On the night of our arrival, Lena and Elsie serve a soup and a spread of liverwurst on dark, crusty bread. There is oatmeal and applesauce for Peter and milk. The room we sleep in is bitter cold, but the bed is heaped with goose feather bedding. I get sick in the night from too much liverwurst and throw up against the wall, too tired to wake Mother. In the morning, the hard frozen vomit is removed without leaving a trace. We have fun taking a bath in a big round copper tub. The water is heated by a wood fire underneath. Carola says this is how cannibals cook missionaries and start stirring the water with a big wooden spoon. Paul teaches me to sing. Frere Jacques does magic tricks with cards. Lena makes mother laugh. With jokes about the current regime. We share meals. Mother gets some provision on her rationing cards from Nessun. Carola visits from the mayor's house where she is treated like a long-lost daughter. Frau Mauer has given her a sweater she knitted and a scarf. Carola tells Mother she would not mind waiting out the war at the Mars. I'd like to stay at the farm. Okay, so end reading. Very, very good. Let's say we got to a good point there. All right, perfect. So that was really interesting. I feel what worked really well about that is the world building. I feel like I was definitely in the world of the story. Now, I think it's good to set off, right, that I would not be the intended audience for this. But with that aside, I want to say that the story itself was actually very concise. I think I felt like I was fully immersed in this world. I think the world building worked very well. I absolutely 100% loved the descriptions you use in this. You, Cristina, you have a very unique style with your writing. And there are so many moments that I had to highlight, especially in the first couple of pages, where your use of metaphors and similes are done very, very well. You do some really great things, which really add to the description of the world and help develop the main protagonist and the main character. So absolutely great job. You have some phenomenal word choice throughout the story. And I think it adds to this kind of almost like the childlike narrative that we have from a protagonist, which works very well. So really good job. I think that's actually super cool. I think it's really interesting that you have the backdrop of the war and of that time period. This story is taking place during that time period, and you do a really good job of setting up the world. So I think that's really, really good. I think the couple opportunities that we have from it. Let's see. I would say the few opportunities, I would say we could definitely focus on. What's interesting is because the world building is the strength, but I think there's some opportunities for some line editing and clarifying some of the specific time periods for readers who are not familiar with that part of the war, that era, or what's going on specifically. So I think that would be one aspect. Let me think. I don't have a problem with the structure. I think the plot, I have a couple of questions on the plot itself. So I think the world building and the plot would be my two biggest opportunities for it. Yeah, that's actually a really good point. Was the capitalization of West and East symbolic? Very cool. If so, absolutely agreed. Yeah, so it sounds like the overall story is they were Germans, they're traveling, living in occupied Poland. No, they're essentially a German family that were traveling through. It sounds like they were not Germans. I think they were Polish. It is the quarter the Germans called an area. We're changing. Yeah, okay, so you bring up a really good point. So let me hop into it. So I think we just need to clarify some of the details. Let's see, which connects the villages. Slay waits for us. Pulling their Arabians. So you do a good job here of once again setting up the world very, very well. I love this opening. Clearly, right, it's 1943 in occupied Poland. This good. I think what we're missing from this, and I know this is an excerpt, so you probably already set up your characters, but I think what we're missing from this is a real character setup. I think now this is an excerpt, so you've probably already done this, but from this specific excerpt, I'm not too clear on who the characters are. You mentioned Mr. Novak, which is interesting. That's fine. I don't think we're going to need too much description on Novak since it seems like he's just a temporary character. I would say her belly, Mr. Nut helps. Her belly is bulging with a sibling soon to arrive. Yep. Oh my god, I love this description. Petronius, Pegasus, in motion. We glide along on the path, invisible under the glistening snow. Clearly, it's Christmas time. The white owls of my imagination fly among the trees. Mom takes my hand. I feel the baby move. So I think what I need is I need a little bit more description on who is my protagonist. How old is she? First off, I get the feeling that she's young. Especially if she's imagining the type who has an imagination. I get the feeling that maybe she's like a young teenager, but it's not very clear on who the protagonist is. So I need a couple more details. You've set up the time period well, which is great. It is not at the end in occupied Poland. I might also add that it's Christmas because you're doing these sleigh bells things, so it makes me think that okay, it's Christmas time. You're making me think that it's Christmas time. So I would make sure to add the 1943 and Christmas just to clarify for the reader. And I think that would make it a little easier. Let's see. I like the tale. You do some really cool references, which I absolutely love. Yeah, so you introduce more family, but who is on Uncle Wetzel? So I think this is just a good opportunity, right? So every time we introduce a character, I need some type of description, like who is Uncle Wetzel? And how does he stand out beyond him being Uncle Wetzel? You do a great job with the Germans later on in the story, but right now I have no clue who he is. Right, so you mentioned her being too young, but what is too young? So is she not? Is she like a preteen then? Let's see. You do a good job of her POV, right? So you do a really good job of how she views the world. Like you can tell it's young, but I think I just want to clear a distinction. I wish my dad and my older sister Lilo would. So she has a couple siblings. I think right now some of the siblings are. I'm kind of mixing up some of the siblings because I'm not sure who's who. I am too young to. My sister is quiet. So who is her sister? And this is once again another character development opportunity. Who is her sister? At this point, I'm just not clear. Like I'm clear on the mother. The father's not with them, and it sounds like another sister's not with them. The boy Peter, I think, is not born yet. But who is the sister that's with her? I think I need a little bit more description. I wish my dad and my older sister Lilo. Yep, they're not with them. That was clear. But I need a description. Who is this sister? What's her name? Who is she about? What? I just need to know more about her so it's clear. Let's see. We're still awake when mother joined her presence. Yep. This line is incredible. This is one of my favorite lines. I'm just like favorite line. 1944 passes like flash fiction. That is hands down the best line. That was so ingenious. Really, really smart. I absolutely love that. Absolutely love that. Let's see, February. Yep. And then wait, this is when we hop in. You do a good job of skipping time periods. You do a really good job of skipping the years. So now we're cemented. Yep. So once again, we have Uncle Wenzel, but I'm just not clear on who Uncle Wenzel is. And as a formatting note, you use quotation marks a lot. You don't want to use quotation marks unless a character is speaking. Every time you use quotation marks, it makes me think a character is speaking and it confuses me. Quotation marks are only used if a character is verbally saying something. So you want to replace that with either apostrophes or you would go italics. Right? It is a secret. You could also, you could probably bold it as well. No, I wouldn't go bold. I would just italics. I would go, it is a secret. And I would go like that. I would go like that. It is a secret because that still highlights it and makes it clear, like, okay, that it's just emphasizing the word. You could also get away with it just italicizing it, either or. Mother says the wallet, same here. So that's the same comment for any time you've used quotation marks throughout this piece. right? And then like once again, like we're introduced to a lot of characters here, and I don't really have that much set up for each of the characters. So you've introduced Bozena. Interesting name, by the way. That's actually super cool. And mine's been Peter. What is unique about this housekeeper? She's a young woman who is a housekeeper. Is there a unique trait or aspect about her? I miss my sisters, my papa, my muti, her alarm. Is Carola the sister that was with her earlier? I think we could just some clarification. Let's see. You do a good job of setting up here. Lilo is the other one. And even though I'm not like familiar with the European region at all, you actually do a really good job of establishing me in the geography. So like, even though I'm not like, oh, I've actually been to Frankfurt and Croatia, but even though these, I'm not as familiar with what's located where, you do a good job of grounding the reader in the present, or not the present, but in the present moment of the story and where things are located. So really, really great job on that part. That's hard to do. Yeah. So I think that's going to be about the majority of the descriptions that I have for you. Most of the descriptions, Christine, or most of the recommendations that I've given previously are for the entire excerpt. The only exceptions is the Germans that you introduce at the end are very unique and very well done. Very, very good job. I would keep that section as is because that was my favorite part and the most engaging. The part with the German family was really, really cool. So that's the one part that I would actually not change. I think the entire piece could definitely benefit from some line editing. Absolutely. I think the story is right. I could tell that you have the story. I think the next step is like you actually need an editor to basically go through line by line and basically cutting out extra words, extra descriptions, because there's a lot of sections where they could just be cleaned up and made a little bit more concise. Absolutely. It's not something that I could do in a live stream, but definitely if you need a line editor, I can help you out with that. Just shoot me a message if you need it. Awesome. Cristina, thanks so much for sharing that. That was a super cool story. I think one of the things that I love is being able to get different genres and get feedback from like different types of writers, be able to read different stories. That was super cool. Really, really fun. And then let's see. It looks like Eli, you had some good notes here. Yeah, the walls have ears is a great line. Cristina, your description is you have a very unique style for your description. It's very, very great job. That really makes you stand out as a writer, which is awesome. Yeah, so some of these things, so like if the narrator isn't old enough to understand what is going on, the quotes on youth organization and settlers, well, nice for the audience. I'm wondering how she knows those things are lies. Yeah, so it's like those are some things where because I'm not clear on the protagonist's age, it's hard for me to understand what she does and does not know. She could be super young and she could have full recognition of these things because her parents have talked about it. During a war era, children have to become mature. Children have to basically become adults, right, to survive. So I think I could challenge that she might actually have to know those things, but the problem is because we're not super clear on her age. It's the how she perceives them is what's up to debate. Yeah, absolutely agree. Overall, loved it. Super cool read. If you're a fan of that style of storytelling, of historical fiction, absolutely a really interesting read. So awesome, Christina. Thanks for sharing. And if you have any additional questions, since you'll probably be watching this on the replay, feel free to message me if there's anything that didn't make sense or you need any additional details. Awesome. So let's see. Who do we got next on deck? I got Sean Spence. Sean, I got the next excerpt of your script on deck. Let me throw this up. Sean, I got you here on deck. Thank you. I'm going to pull up your script. And if y'all have joined in on some of the previous story and critique shows, we've done a number of excerpts of Sean's script. Torrent, super cool. It's a thriller. I've been having a lot of fun digging into the different pieces of it. Awesome. So I'm looking forward to hopping into it, and I'll get to that in just a second. And let's see. By the way, I am currently doing a discount this weekend up until the end of Monday for the holiday weekend. 30 to 60% off coaching, editing, and ghost writing services. Make sure that you email me at kaufman@thecreativeghost.com. I'll throw that back down. Make sure you send me an email or message me on social if you are wanting any of these services. This is a one-time discount that I am trying to help the community. I wanted to drop my prices because I know writing is so expensive. And especially most of you, I know that you're doing writing as a hobby. It's your thing you're passionate about, but you're not at that point yet where you're able to do it as a main living. And that's all right. It's the thing is, for us to be able to get it to that level, like at some point we have to invest some money, whether that's in editing or doing like the book cover or all the different things, or we have to invest time in learning how to do so. So I try to drop my price to help you out. And let's see, I also pulled up, I'll also pull this up so you can see the website real quick. So awesome. So you can see I got my website here for the Creative Ghost. This is just the homepage, but the services for hire professional. So you can see I have the discounted prices right here. I'll make sure to drop I should probably drop the website link. There you go. There's the website link is in the comments. If you want to know more, you want to go check it out. This just lists what is involved in hiring a writing coach, the specific values that you'll receive, and then also my prices for editing. Super cool, super helpful, especially if you need help like right now. I think the thing about writing coaching, about hiring a writing coach, is a lot of people aren't super clear on what does a writing coach do. Basically, the way I frame this is you can purchase an hour's segment. Right now, it's only $30 for an hour. And then that's credited towards one-on-one Zoom calls. So basically, the time is deducted from the Zoom call, or you can email me with story excerpts for editing, story outlines, concepts, or ideas for brainstorming, and then or you can ask me for writing strategies and advice. And basically, the amount of time that I put into it gets deducted from the number of hours that you've purchased. It is so, so, so helpful if you're working on a story and you want to speed up the process. Imagine real fast that you're working on a rough draft of a story and you don't have a lot of time because you're busy. Maybe you have kids, maybe you have work, or you go to school, and you know you can't invest that much time. But imagine that you finish a story excerpt, right? And you don't want a chance losing motivation. You email it to me and you get feedback same day, right? You get feedback on how to fix it. And that way, as you work on the story, your overall skill level improves section by section the farther you get into it. So then by the time you get to the second draft, the amount of time that an editor will have to spend on it is very minimal, and it will be saving you money in the long term. So I would highly recommend if you're at a place where you can invest money. Once again, not for everybody. This is only in a for you in a place if you have the finances to invest. Awesome. So just wanted to make sure I did a shout out there. Let's see. And John, let's see, you said, I don't have much money. I thought about it and I know I might need an editor maybe in the future. Yeah, and that's totally all right. Once again, it's one of these things where I'm just going to put my prices out there consistently. And then, John, whenever you're at a point where the story is ready to take to that next level, and then you have the money to invest, I'll be here. Totally no worries. You have some really great writing too, by the way, man. I could definitely see you getting some traction on some of your work beyond what you've already done. So super cool. All right, so that's enough of that. Let's hop back into the next story. So Sean, if you're here in the stream, just drop a comment. I'm going to throw up the next excerpt for Torrent. Ooh, a thriller. I love the variety of stories today, by the way. I absolutely loving the variety of stories. What was that? We started off with fantasy, we went to historical fiction, and now we're going to thriller/horror. Wonderful. I'm absolutely love it. Okay. So I got Sean pulled up here. Perfect. And I got this all set. Let me drop this as the ticker. Perfect. Beautiful. All right. So I am all set. Let me just make sure, check my email, make sure I'm not missing anything. Sometimes people will message me on socials if they have like questions. Let me see. Perfect. And I am all good. So I'm all set to do this. Excellent. So I got 20 minutes on the clock. All right. So we got Torrent. It looks like we're on pages 39 through 45. Now, if you've been watching along on previous critique shows, essentially what we've gone over so far is this is a serial killer. It's a serial killer story. We have the two cops who are Billy and blanking on the other name, Billy and Nick. So Nick and Billy are two detectives. Nick's the older, gruff one, kind of an asshole, has a baggage. Billy's like the one with experience, but he's the fresh come from out of town. So it's been a fun story. And then Miss Summers is our evil serial killer. She's like this little creepy old lady. I actually love what I've been saying so far. Okay, so I got 20 minutes on the clock. And make sure that my highlighter is good. Okay. All right. Torrent by Sean Spence. Interior police station. Next day. Billy walks into the police station and heads to his desk. He sees Nick having a conversation with an older black woman. Officer Burns passes by Billy, copy in hand. Hey, who was that? Officer Lewis. Didn't you spend all day with him yesterday? And Billy ignores Burns' juvenile attempt at a joke. Who is Officer Lewis talking to? Oh, that's Miss Summers. Miss Summers? Do they know each other? Why? Because they're both black? That's racist. How do they know each other? I am sure it has something to do with the case him and Garcia are working on for Miss Summers. Gang shooting of her grandson. Are you serious? Yeah. Well, Nick was quarantining with COVID. Garcia told him he had a lead about her grandson getting shot and missing gang members or something. Anyway, he told Nick he was going to follow up on it. Went out that night, never came back. So, Officer Lewis blames himself? Himself? Hell, he blames everyone but himself. Sarge, fellow officers, the gangs, society as a whole. I'm sure you'll be on the list soon enough. Billy watches as Nick and Miss Summers talk. I just think Nick has an ulterior motive. Ulterior motive? This may just be me, but he probably wants to convince her to give him the rights to her story so he can decide who will play him in the next Netflix film. My guess, he probably thinks it should be Idris Elba. Billy looks at Burns confused. The actor? Billy is still lost. Come on. Come on. Bloodsport? Knuckles? Heimdall? Are these gang members? No. They're characters Idris Elba is famous for. Suicide Squad? Sonic the Hedgehog? Thor? Sorry, I don't watch a lot of movies. I'm more of a news guy. Jesus. Understand not wanting to see 3,000 years of longing, but Billy changes the subject back to something that truly has his interest. Do you know if they've made any arrests in the Summers case? No, they haven't. And I would stay away from anything regarding Garcia. That includes the Summers case. Officer Burns walks away. Officer Burns. Who doesn't know Idris Elba? Nick makes Nick makes eye contact with Billy as Miss Summers turns around and sees Billy too. She smiles as she waves. Billy waves back. Nick says something to Miss Summers, inaudible to Billy, and the two walk into an adjacent room. As Billy walks towards the open door, it abruptly slams shut. Nick and Billy look at each other through the office window as Nick closes the blinds. Billy walks back to his empty desk. He stares at his blank monitor. He opens his programs file on his computer and clicks on the icon associated with SK Open Now. Opening up a separate browser, he types in Gang Reynoldsburg shooting. A list of articles mention a local gang, the Skull Brotherhood, and the multiple shootings around town. He types Skull Brotherhood into SCO Open Now. A list of known members affiliated with the gang fill the webpage. Looking back at the search results from the web, he sees an article regarding an innocent black boy being shot. He clicks on the article, which shows the boy standing next to Miss Summers. The caption reads, Christopher Summers with his grandmother, Cynthia. Billy returns to SK Open Now and types in the same name, Christopher Summers. The search returns with no results to any affiliated gang. Billy's attention is diverted by the opening of the office door across the hall. As Miss Summers exits the room, Billy watches Nick give her a hug. Miss Summers breaks the hug, making eye contact with Billy, and walks towards him as Nick follows behind. Hello there. You must be the officer Nicky was just telling me about. I don't think we've met yet. No, I don't believe we have. Nicky, you didn't tell me your new partner was so cute. I'm Cynthia Summers. Nice to meet you, Miss Summers. Oh, please. I'm family here. You can call me Cynthia. Officer Wallace, but you can call me Billy. You can call him Officer Wallace. He's not family yet. Oh, Nicky, be nice. Miss Summers would like to file a complaint against her neighbors, Mr. and Mr. Williams. I told her you would be more than happy to help her with the report. I don't know why they keep calling the cops on me. I am not that noisy. Oh, I believe we were at your residence yesterday. So sorry we missed you. Me too. Miss Summers, like I said before, we can't keep coming by with all these complaints from your neighbors. It's not all my neighbors, just the pesky couple from across the street. They've never liked me since they moved in. I'm doing nothing but living out the rest of my life as peaceful as I can. Glad to hear you are holding up. No one should go through the loss of a child, let alone a grandchild. I have my good days and bad. Maybe it's the bad days the Williams are complaining about. Well, as I said earlier, Miss Summers, I will personally look over your grandson's case to see if we may have missed something. Thank you, Nicky. And please, it's Cynthia. You don't have to be all professional in front of your new trainee. Trust me. I've learned so little about Officer Lewis, but being professional would not be at the top of the list. Well, I hope maybe your professionalism might rub off on him. Fingers crossed. And my condolences about your wife. Nicky said she was murdered? Billy, shocked by this question, glances over at Nick before nodding reluctantly. I know the pain of losing a family member. My heart goes out to you. Thank you. I never felt an emptiness of self like I did right then. And I will never forget that feeling. Is that Langston Hughes? Not sure. I heard it somewhere and it kind of stuck with me. Well, I love a good quote, and that one seems apropos. Nicky also tells me you are known as did you call him, Nicky, a super cop? Wow, you and Nicky talked a lot about me. For the record, I didn't call him that. I said some people do. And I didn't say you could call me Nicky. Officer Lewis is right. I'm not a super cop. That was a label from another time. Well, you know what they say. Labels put people in boxes, and those boxes are shaped like coffins. You don't know how true that is, Cynthia. Miss Summer turns and gently touches Nick's chest and pats his heart. See, Nikki, Billy and I are already on a first name basis. It's like we're kindred spirits. Miss Summers turns to look at Billy's desktop screen. Billy quickly turns the monitor off. Well, maybe not. It was nice meeting you, Officer Wallace. Here, I'll walk you out. Nick and Miss Summers head for the front door. As they exit the building, Billy turns his monitor back on and stares at the article on the screen. End reading. Wow, I really like that. I think this was probably my most favorite character description scene of Miss Summers. The the feeling and the vibe between Miss Summers, Nick, and Billy, because this is the first time that we have all three of these characters in the room who are all major characters in the story. We have the two protagonists and the antagonist. This is the first time we have all three of them, and it flows very, very, very well. So that's super cool. Absolutely my favorite part of this. I was 100% engaged. I think with the first section, I was a little lost on the character with Officer Burns, and I'm not sure why. Let's go back into it, because there's something like, I don't know if it was the character development or I don't know if it was the dialogue, but overall, I would say second part worked very well. There's very little I would change from the Miss Summers, Billy, and Nick dialogue. I think just the overall thing probably just needs a little editing down, but overall, really nice job. Really, really nice job. All right, so let's get into it. All right, so we got Billy heading into the police station with Officer Burns. Officer Lewis. So the thing with Officer Burns and Idris, I'm like, Idris Elba? Idris Elba? I'm pretty sure it's Idris Elba. I'm like, wait, I like, that's going to bug me. How do you pronounce Idris Elba? Idris. So it's Idris. Idris Elba. Okay, Idris. I was like, Idris. I was like, I definitely know the actor, but I was like having to do it on a live reading. He's a really good actor, by the way. Okay, so I absolutely love his thing with Idris Elba is actually very unique, and I really like it. But for some reason, the jokes didn't land with me, and I'm not sure why. So we start off with, "Hey, who is that? I'm Officer Lewis. Didn't you spend all day with him yesterday?" Yep. Who is Officer Lewis talking to? Oh, that's Miss Summers. I would almost, let's see, because you have Officer Lewis, I would almost recommend having one of them refer to him as Nick, because at first I was kind of confused. I was like, wait, who's Officer Lewis? Oh, that's Nick. Only because we're so used to calling him Nick. And especially from a reading standpoint, I would just have one of them say Nick. Oh, that's Nick, Officer Lewis. Because who is Officer Lewis? Who is Nick? I mean, Officer Lewis talking to. I would do something like that just for a point of clarity. Oh, that's Miss Summers. Miss Summers, this is good. Miss Summers, do they know each other? Why? Because they're both black? That's racist. I think what threw me off about this was I wasn't sure if he was being serious or if it was a joke. And that's what I wasn't clear, because Billy gets irritated, and either of those things could be true, right? He could be serious because that's something that annoys him, or it could be a joke because he's messing around with Billy. So I think to make that clear, I would add either some type of description, some type of parenthetical description. Right. I don't know if it'll let me do it correctly on this document. Jokingly or seriously. I would do one of those things just to make it clearer, or just adjust the joke, one of the two, because of that, it just kind of threw me off on the tone, because I wasn't sure, like, okay, so is this more like Officer Burns? Is he like a serious character, or is he like a funny character? Because once he mentions the Idris Elba, no, Idris. Once he mentions Idris Elba, then I'm like, okay, so I think he's more of like a joker. So as a character development standpoint, his character was just a little confusing. And he says, and also I don't think we've introduced Officer Burns before. So Officer Burns needs a description. I don't, unless I missed it. So make sure we give Officer Burns a character description. This is the first time he's here, because the only other officer I can think of was the one who was the asshole earlier on, I think early on in the script. And that character was hilarious, but you could tell he was a jerk. So this seems like the second officer outside of Nick and Billy that's being introduced. Yeah, it kind of makes me think of, is this character kind of like from The Office, kind of like what, Stanley? That's kind of the character that he reminded me of from that one character from The Office for some reason. Let's see, how do they know each other? I'm sure it has something to do with the case him and Garcia were working on for Miss Summers. That's fine. Are you serious? Yeah, well, Nick was quarantining with COVID. Garcia told him he had a lead about her grandson getting shot and missing gang members. Anyway, he told Nick he was going to follow up on it. Went out that I never came back. This works. I would still just edit it down just a little bit. It just feels a little wordy, but the information does work. So I would just edit this down or break it up into him saying part of it, Billy asking a question, him following up. Okay. So Officer Lewis blamed himself. And this is like the realization. And this is a big moment for Billy, right? Because now he's like, oh, this is why Nick's an asshole. So this is a huge moment. I would almost have like a pan moment of, I would almost include an action of like Nick like throwing his hands up in the air, or them like watching as Nick does something. And I think that would actually highlight this moment from a visual perspective. So Officer himself, Hallie blames everyone. This is good. That's really good. I just think Nick has an ulterior motive. This may just be me, but he probably wants to convince her to give him the rights to her story. So this was interesting. Everything that we've learned about Nick, I would never think this, but it could be true. So you don't necessarily need to say it in the script, but I need to better understand, why would Officer Burns think this? Is there something that Nick has done? And this doesn't have to necessarily be just explaining the script, but is there something that Nick has done that would suggest that he's in it for fame? Right? Because I think that would add to the description, because this description about, okay, well, maybe he just wants as a Netflix story, like, why? Only because everything that Nick's done so far doesn't lead me personally to think that this could be, but maybe there's an action that could. So I might even include, this may just be me, but Nick is always talking about Netflix shows, or Nick's always talks about whatever, or one time he did this. So I would just clarify why he thinks that. My guess, he probably thinks it should be Idris Elba. I think that was funny. I think it just got lost because I was confused about this portion. That's why I missed the punchline, the joke, right? So I think there needs to be some type of something that breaks it up here, and then this needs to be a standalone sentence. My guess, he probably thinks it should be Idris Elba. And then the actor, and then come on, Bloodsport, Knuckles, and then that would make more sense. I think it would still be like this. I think so, even though this is mid dialogue. I'm not sure. I would Google that. I'm not sure if this would be quotation marks or apostrophes. Are these gang members? And then the joke would land much more. Absolutely. Are these gang members? I'm like, that's hilarious. That's absolutely hilarious. No, they're Suicide Squad, Sonic the Hedgehog, Thor. Sorry, I don't watch a lot of movies. I'm more of a news guy. I would move this after Suicide Squad, Sonic the Hedgehog, Thor. Characters that Idris Elba is famous for. Sorry, perfect. Jesus, I understand not wanting to see the 3,000. I think this, so you drill on this bit. I think I would almost end the punchline of the joke. I would cut out one of these and end the punchline after the gang members, because then it hits. It's much more impactful. Really changes the subject. Do you know if they've made any arrest cases? That's good. And this is funny, right? The Idris Elba thing is funny. Right. Yeah. So I think that would like clean that portion up a little bit more. I'm more of a news guy yep, absolutely. We've learned a lot about Billy from previous readings, but I'm more of a news guy. Very clearly show that's a great line for Billy. Absolutely. This whole description here, you'll probably know what I'm going to say. You know what I'm going to say, Sean? Let's clean it up, edit it down a little bit. A lot of description, because I think about what are the actions that are specifically happening. One, Billy goes to try to join the conversation. He gets shut out. Two, he pulls up the research on Miss Summers. And technically, you have a lot of references there with the gang, but those are really the only two things that actually happen before they walk out and he joins the conversation. The first one I think is fine with him getting slammed out. I think that's funny. I think this whole portion with him doing the research, I would just edit this down. Is all the gang stuff, like the specifics, is that important? If it is, leave it. I don't know what SK Open now is. I just assume it's some type of cop police browser or database thing. But this is absolutely like this is important to the story. I just think it needs to be edited down from just a reader perspective. How there you must be the officer. The whole thing with Miss Summers, Billy and Nick is hilarious. I think the one thing that you could layer on into this section is I want a little bit more foreshadowing. That's the only thing. The comedy of this whole section is great. The character development, Miss Summers, Billy, Nick, beautiful. I actually think this scene worked very, very well. I think it just layering on, I need some more foreshadowing from Miss Summers because once again, she's our antagonist, right? So I want to have as many opportunities as possible to, as a viewer, to think like, oh, is she going to like say something or like when the it's like you think of these serial killer shows, right? I think of serial killer shows like Dexter or like Breaking Bad or not, but like these anti-heroes. How do they act when they're in a room full of police, right? Like you're hoping they're going to mess up, right? Like you're like, oh, what's going to happen? Something's going to happen. And right now this is like a nice casual exchange, which is funny. I just want a little bit more foreshadowing. You have Miss Summers lose her anger at the end, which is beautiful. I would find another moment or two for her to maybe not necessarily lose her anger, but for her to be a little shorter, to be like, oh, is she going to say something? Or for her to say something that Nick and Billy don't understand. And for the viewer to be like, oh, but she's talking about the body she's keeping in her house, something to that effect. Or even referencing something else that we've seen from her perspective that Billy and Nick don't. So I think that there's a really good opportunity here. And I think wherever you want to put it is entirely up to you because right now it does flow. I just think the foreshadowing would help for the overall script and for the visual perspective. So yeah, but in terms of the specific things, I don't really have any recommendations because it was fun. Langston Hughes bit was great. Once again, I don't think you would quotation marks. I think it would be apostrophes, but just Google it. I'm not sure. And this whole thing with the Nikki, like the whole thing with the Nikki and the name, like that's hilarious. That works. Good job. I feel so clear on who Nick and Billy are by this point in the script. Miss Summers. And this is good. Well, you know what they say. Labels put people in boxes, and those boxes are shaped like coffins. I want that like 3 more times in this conversation. Because that is like, oh, that's funny. That's creepy because she's actually keeping somebody in like a coffin, right? Or she's actually keeping somebody like, that's great. I want more of that. And then this is great. She's like, she's super cordial. And then she sees the desktop and she's like, well, maybe not. And then there's that sinister vibe, which makes me think she's going to try to like kill Billy next. Oh God. So that's a great way to end off the section. I absolutely loved it. Great work, Sean. That's awesome. That's all that I got for you, my man. But really good. I could tell the farther you're getting into the script, I could just tell it's becoming a lot more fluid, and a lot of the inconsistencies that we saw earlier on the script are becoming less problematic. So really great work. I always have to commend anyone who's submitted multiple sections of their story. So really great work. Thanks again for submitting. I'm having a lot of fun going through the script. Definitely eager to see it brought to the screen. Definitely these like cop thrillers are always fun. Okay, awesome. So let me pull back up here. All right, so that was an awesome reading. And then let's see, who do we got on deck? And finally, Eli, I got your story on deck. Eli, I know you're here with me, so I'm going to pull it up in just a moment. All right, and before we get to that, so let me drop the ticker. So I got you here, Eli. I'm going to pull up your story. And before we get to that, do you know a writer who needs help with their story? Maybe they need coaching, editing, or maybe you're like, hey, you know what? They have stories and I think they would really benefit from having it read aloud and having them hear their story. Share this stream with a friend. Share this video. Go down. It's usually down here. So it's usually down here below the video. Click on the share button and share it with your friends. If you know people who would benefit from this, come bring them to the community. What I found is the more writers who join the community, the more writers who come, sit back, will provide feedback and provide a fuller experience during each of these live streams. So definitely make sure to share this with a friend. Awesome. And then also be aware that a lot of the times people will drop comments on the replay after the stream ends. So I always recommend, if you've submitted a story, to go back and check the videos in the future, maybe give it like a week or two after the stream ends to see if any people left comments on your specific story. Always, always. All right, beautiful. So I'm getting Eli, I'm getting your story queued up. Super excited. Let's see. All right, very, very fun. I'm like been eager to hop into this. All right, so by the way, so the story is called Baboon Pie and Jaguar Champagne. Like, before I even hop in the story, I have no clue what it's about. For all I know, it's about baboons, but that is an excellent name for a story. And it makes me think that it's probably some type of, maybe it might be fantasy fiction. It might take place in the real world, but the name gives the story a vibe. I have to absolutely commend you on your name choice. Now, how it relates to the story is like, that's part of it. But similar to Stephanie, if you're still here with your story, Redfire, the name intrigues the reader and pulls them into it. So absolutely great job on the name. What was that? There was that movie that was really popular that I forgot what that was called. There was a movie last year that had that kind of similar name. It was like something milkshakes or strawberry milkshakes or something like that. But the name, it's almost like, it's kind of like that. It gives it that like almost indie vibe, which is cool. Like, it shouldn't work, but it does. So awesome. I just want to comment that because I think names are awesome. Okay, so let's pull up the story and let me reset the timer. Awesome. Excellent. All right, so we're making good timing. Okay. And okay, that's right. Let me just pull up the email real fast, make sure I'm not missing anything important. Let me see. Uno momento. So I'm just pulling this stuff up. And I know, let's see, Eli, you had sent me, let's see, I know you had sent me an initial thing about it. And I wanted to make sure that I don't miss anything. I think because there was pronunciation opportunities. All right, so this is the first chapter of the sci-fi novel, Baboon, Pie, and Jaguar Champagne. Absolutely, so sci-fi, which is awesome. I love sci-fi. These are presented, so if there's a time. Perfect. And I know you made it really super easy for me. I just want to make sure there weren't any enunciation things that I missed. Perfect. And you talked about the character. I glossed over the things you touched for the story because I try to hop into these readings from the viewpoint of a reader. So if something doesn't make sense, the story should be able to speak to it. But in terms of like the structural things, that's actually really helpful for me as a reader because you included pronunciations. Love that. Thank you so much for the pronunciation guide. It helps me better read your story and give a better experience. Perfect. Awesome. Okay, let's hop into it. Wanted to make sure that I didn't miss anything. And I am all ready. Baboon Pie and Jaguar Champagne. Chapter 1. Zikung, I Superbike Bandit. Somewhere near the Colorado-Wyoming state line. June 23, 2021. Zikung stood at the top of a small rocky promontory in the midst of a small, shining hold on, sorry about that. There we go. There we go. That's what I was missing. All right, I'm going to restart that because that was bugging me. I wanted to make sure I had the highlighter. Okay. Zikung stood at the top of a small rock promontory in the midst of a shimmering ocean of grass that danced in the wind as freely as Moses. Mo for short. Zikung's young son had, when he was still just a toddler, not quite big enough for the road. The wind bit against the cold back of Zikung's neck, and the aging bandit turned the collar of his green leather riding jacket up against its teeth to no avail. In this part of the world, the wind runs free for miles and miles and miles without much more than a loose scattering of small rocky promontories like this one to slow it. The sun crept down, but Zikung kept his hexagonal sunglasses with their iridescent lenses on and simply jerked his head lightly to the left to transition the glasses from sunblocker mode to crepuscular mode enhancement from sunblocker mode to crepuscular enhancement. He grinned slyly and subtly behind his thick black beard. It hung shaggy and tangled down to his collarbone, and it also danced in the wild, whipping winds. But so too did his hair dance, though not with the freedom and grace and innocence of a child, but with the wickedness and hate of a thick knot of coiled vipers. It was jet black and 2 feet long, and Zikung couldn't remember the last time he'd washed it. He was a short, powerful man with a wiry, slender build, full of sinew and potential energy waiting to be released. He wore a loose-fitting silk tiger print shirt, which he left halfway unbuttoned, exposing a respectable tuft of graying chest hair, and 5 or 6 dangling chains and medallions, mustard yellow pleated trousers, which flowed loosely around his legs in the windy dusklight before they tapered down and tucked snugly into his bright red riding boots. A short black hand, rolled cigarello, hung loosely from his mouth, embering in the wind, glowing like a ruby in the dying light. The smoke curled and swirled and flitted off into infinity. Zikung followed the smoke with his eyes until he saw what he had been waiting for. Far off to the east, in the gathering gloom, a red semi-truck carrying a yellow cargo container drove along the lonely ribbon of road which cut through the shimmering grass sea. Red truck, yellow container. Just like Jimmy said, Zikung muttered to himself under his breath. Jimmy, next time I see Jimmy, I've got to give him some of that new batch of jerky. Maybe a swift kick in the ass. Depends how things go tonight. In Zikung's line of work, banditry, that is, thieving, really, for the right price. In that line of work, a man spends a lot of time alone and grows accustomed to voicing his thoughts with no one around to critique. With no one around to critique them. In his line of work, a man's life also, at times, intersects with those of men in dark professions. Brilliant men whose genius and ambition outstripped their morals, if they had any at all. He'd heard the rumors, the supermen, the beast people, the grotesques. Using a complex series of rapid eye darts and rhythmic blinking, Zikung activated 10x magnification on his glasses and assessed the target. Okay, friend, just you, or do you have company? He couldn't see anyone else in the cab. Perfect. Could be armed, but that's not a problem. Zikung was armed too. He wore holsters on both hips and one on each side under his riding jacket, each with a specialized custom pistol, each with its own purpose. One was fully automatic, another was high caliber, for when he had to really pack a punch. Then he had his go-to, his workhorse, the sort of everyday pistol, and finally was his favorite, the one he kept on his left side, a genuine prototype laser pistol. He'd stolen it off some drunk ex-Soviet in Beijing a few years earlier, and he treasured it ever since. It ran off little energy cells that were filled with two strange liquids that Zikung didn't understand, but they reminded him of a lava lamp, and they glowed a deep magenta and rich cyan as they swirled around, without mixing inside the little cylinder that was about the size of a robin's egg. One of those cylinders gave him between 1 and 50 shots, depending on the intensity setting, which was controlled with a small dial on the side of the gun. The dial had 4 settings: Nizki, Suradina, Sureznie, Oni, Shots, Zeni. These equated to 50, 25, and 1 shots. Getting hit at the Nizki setting was basically like getting shot with a 9mm round, except for there wasn't much in the way of ballistics involved. The laser shot straight and went right through bones and didn't ricochet around and do all that extra damage like a bullet. It was a surgical weapon, which was why it had an experimental scope, which interfaced with his glasses to allow him to aim no matter how he held the weapon. At Saradina, it was like getting hit with a shot from a rifle, particularly one with a lot of stopping power. You could expect to lose a limb that was hit anywhere, even too close, even close to the torso. Zikung had once killed a charging bison with a single shot at Sureznia. Bored a hole straight through the top of the beast's skull, big enough for Zikung to stick his entire arm through. He'd only ever shot one thing at Oni Sho Zeni. And that was a derelict old tour bus. And it had exploded like it was hit by an artillery bombardment. It was difficult to extrapolate, but he guessed it could bring down a jet or something along those lines. Maybe destroy a tank. He thought about the blasted up old bus as he stood there overlooking the ocean of grass. It wasn't an image he was likely to forget. Person be vaporized instantly. Person be vaporized instantly, he muttered as a particularly cold gust of wind blasted him. Zikung may have been a bandit, but he didn't want to vaporize a man's soul. Going through the hell of life on this earth was punishment enough, he figured. And anyone gone through that deserves to find comfort in the next life with the benefit of a body to enjoy its pleasures. Whatever they may be. He sighed deeply, and for a second, there was a look of profound pain on his face. Then it passed. The pistol had been in a case when he stole it, and also in the case had been 10 power cells. Now he only had 4 left. He'd used up 4 of them, testing how many shots he got on each. And the 4 do not mean 50 shots, 20 shots, 5 shots, and 1 shot. But default, middle, serious, and annihilation. It had been a high price, but he had to know how much ammunition he had on each setting, and his experiments had doubled as a showcase of just what the weapon was capable of. Zikung hadn't been disappointed. The other 2 cells had been spent in the course of duty. Once he'd conducted his tests, he wrote a little script that integrated the count of how many shots he had left at each of the 4 levels into the HUD of his glasses, so he would always know. He glanced routinely at the counts. H40, C16, C4, Y0. In addition to the guns, Zikung carried various edged weapons as well. A hunting knife here, a dagger there. He had a sort of spike club that he carried from time to time. In truth, these were mostly for show. Sure, he'd use them if he had no other choice, but Zikung was a bandit, not a brawler. He preferred to keep his targets and the defenses at as great a distance as he could, pick them off from safety, and avoid killing at all whenever possible. He wasn't a man of violence, but he knew how to use a tool. At least that's what he told himself. And that's the way he tried to live. And when he couldn't keep his target at a distance, he opted for stealth over direct contact. To this end, he employed several sophisticated computer splicing interfaces, which he'd received as payment for a set of particularly damning photographs of a rare earth metals magnate from his then closest competitor. These devices afforded him access to all but the most sophisticated computerized locks, provided he had time to let them run their protocols. He took a last deep drag of his cigarillo before dropping it to the dusty ground and stomping it out. He reduced the magnification on his glasses from 10x to 5x and then to 1x as he watched the red semi-truck with the yellow cargo container roll along the ribbon of road amid the lengthening shadows. He turned and walked over to his superbike. It was a deep Byzantine purple, and the engine and pipes were a sleek, matte gunmetal black. There were several heat-proof LED lights inside of the various alcoves of the body, and they emitted a fan glow of whatever color Zikung wanted. Okay, I'm going to end there. I think that's the beat. So I can go through my feedback. Awesome. Wow, that was a really cool story. That was really cool, interesting, by the way. That I like, wow. I think I'm just kind of like intrigued. I feel intrigued, shocked, and surprised. This might be, Eli, probably one of the first stories where I've read in this show where the character has been given such detailed description. The character, I have such, and this is probably an understatement, I have an extreme level of insight in who this character is, what he looks like, what he thinks, how he feels, and that was only after the first couple pages. I absolutely have to commend you. The way you go about describing this character, Zikung, is phenomenal. So like I just need to end it there because your character development, this is an amazing job of how you would go about character development and defining your protagonist in a way that feels like it hasn't been done before. Now there's absolutely, and it's interesting because what works for it is also an opportunity as well. I think there's a couple areas where the description could be dialed back a little bit, but those areas are far and in between. Overall, I love this character already. I feel like I had a very clear sense of who he was. And even I was finding that voice, I was like, yeah, he's kind of like this, almost like a biker punk who's like a lone wolf, goes to his own tune. So interesting. I absolutely love it. So that was 100%. And so I would say even for what worked, character development hands down, the world building as well. The world building goes hand in hand with the character development. It was hard to say on whether or not the plot is working simply because the focus of this was predominantly character development. You touch upon the guns, which are cool, and you touch upon the mission a little bit, but at least so far into the story, I'm just not sure yet. Awesome. And realistically, the way that you do the dialogue is interesting. You even acknowledge, right, that he is the type of character who basically talks to himself. which is an interesting way to do it. I don't think I'm opposed to it. I actually think it's kind of fun and it adds to the world of the story. I think the biggest opportunities right now is structure. So I think we just have a couple opportunities for structure and then just dialing back in some of the descriptions. Okay, so let me get into it. So I just want to make sure his voice, his thoughts. So you're aware of him voicing his thoughts. Yeah, so you're basically speaking to him, voicing his thoughts under his breath. That makes sense. Okay, so I think this is the interesting thing, and this let's see, the colors for the Russian text were intended to serve as sort of a let's see, I think there's a strong character being like the next part. Okay, cool. So you're probably going to get into more of the story a little bit. But I mean, hey, Eli, the character description was literally incredible. So like, my hat's off to you for character description. The colors for the Russian text were intended to serve as a sort of visual shorthand. So instead of trying to learn those words, you could just remember the colors instead, which I like that. I absolutely like that. I think it's interesting. I think what you're doing from a structural perspective is you're trying something that hasn't been done before, at least from stories I've read. And I think with the structuring, I think part of it works and part of it doesn't. So I'm kind of on the fence. So let's get into it. All right. So from the character description, just your description for him is so incredible. So incredible. Oh my God. I love it. I want to know more about, I want to read more about the story simply because of Zikung as a character. I'm so intrigued by this character. And I mean, it's sci-fi, which is interesting. He's basically watching, from a formatting perspective, I would Google, I don't know if you would, capitalize words like this. I don't know if like as a formatting thing, if that would work or not, because I get that you're wanting to highlight these words. Jerked his head lightly to the left to transition the glasses from sunblocker mode to crepuscular mode, but I get you wanted to highlight them. I would almost, because you're basically using italics throughout the story for a different purpose. But I get that you want to highlight these things. I would do it like this. I would do it as sunblocker mode to, or you can crepuscular enhancement. I think I would do it like that, so it still gives them viability. I think when you fully capitalize something in like a story perspective, I think sometimes for readers it can be jarring. But that could just be a subjective thing on my part. That's just something to keep in mind. Let's see, and I presented them in other languages to illustrate the sort of problems he had to solve. If that's lost, I can definitely try to be clear. Okay. Gotcha. So the problem is that it's in a different language than he's familiar with. Okay, that makes sense. I'm not married to the screen text being called out. It's all in service of clarity. Okay. Yeah, so that would just be formatting and behind his thick black beard. Oh, from a description perspective, I would describe his beard. I would describe his beard and his hair after you did the description for him, because I was like, okay, black beard, that's interesting. You went into a full paragraph, a full thing of his beard and hair, which was cool. But I would actually give him, because I want to imagine his face and his build. Once I got like through this section, I was fully hooked. I want a description of him first, and then I would do the hair after. So that's how I would go about it. I think it would just make it a little clearer. Him and the cigarillo. Perfect description of what's going on in the moment. And then he's basically watching a semi-truck. So he's a bandit. Looks like he's about to it seems like it's a theft piece that he's about to go right on his motorcycle, which is cool. And that's great. So like red truck, yellow container, just like Jimmy said. So, okay. So with description. So the way to go about this, let's see, I don't know what to, all right. So I think the right way to go about this, red truck, yellow container, just like Jimmy said. So if a character is speaking, no, wait. So red truck, yellow container, just like Jimmy said. Zikung muttered to himself. So if he is talking, you got to use quotes. Red truck, yellow container, just like Jimmy said. Right? Because essentially what's happening is he's basically saying this to himself. Red truck, yellow container, just like Jimmy said. Zikung muttered under his breath. Heh, Jimmy. And then what you can do. So like this here, even though technically he's talking to himself, you wouldn't need to italicize that. So you could say red truck, yellow container. This is clear that he's talking to himself, right? And then Zikung muttered under his breath. Heh, Jimmy. And then this next part, you don't necessarily have to have him say this. This could be interiority, but now this is clear. Red truck, yellow container, just like Jimmy said. Zikung muttered under his breath. And then this next part, if this is in his head, heh, Jimmy. Next time I see Jimmy, I've got to give him some of that new batch of jerky, maybe a swift kick in the ass. Depends on how things go. So I like that. I would almost include here that the point that he talks to himself, because you include that a little later. I would actually drop that here right after he talks it, because it better cements the reader earlier on. Let's see. Okay, in my original formatting, it would always be in its own font. His mutterings, a lot of the stuff I planned, his mutterings, a lot of stuff gets lost in the. But yeah, I get what you're saying. Again, my original formatting, it would always be in its own font. His mutterings, a lot of stuff I'd planned get lost in this formatting, which is fine, right? So, and I think Eli with this is something you need to think about, right? So like with me and the reading, you're able to give me context and you're able to provide me with a lot of the details and how these work, but I want you to put yourself into the mind of a reader. Let's say that you just published the book, whether and if you publish it through Amazon as a self-published book, Amazon's going to require a specific type of formatting. So that's going to mess up your formatting if you're publishing through Amazon. But if you're publishing through a publishing house, a little bit of a different story. But you want to put yourself in the mind of a reader, somebody who's never read your story before. Their structuring is you want to make the story as easy to read as possible. If a reader is trying to read this and they're ask themselves like, oh, I'm not sure how he's talking. I'm not sure if it's interiority. I'm not sure this color thing. You will lose a reader simply if it's too confusing, right? So we need to find every opportunity to make these things that you want to do, which you're trying some new things, which is great. Do the things, but we just have to make it as easy as possible is what I'm saying. That's always my recommendation. So you always want to make things as easy as possible because like you don't want a chance. I don't want you to chance losing even one reader because they're confused on the structure when it is such a cool story. This story has so much potential to reach a very wide readership because it's very well told. The description is absolutely incredible. So I think the structure is interesting. This is a great example of how you're using the structure to further the story and the storytelling itself. So something to keep in mind, absolutely. And I'm sure you probably already thought a lot about this because the structure is integral to also the character development and the world building, which isn't done that often, which is very, very cool. Hey, what's up, Bethany? Welcome to the stream, my friend. We're literally just hopping into a critique of Eli's story. Make sure after the stream ends, you go back and you read some of the story, or you listen to some of the stories. We've had some really good stories in the show so far. This was a really, really good story you actually just missed out on. You should definitely go back and rewatch it after the stream ends. Let's see, no doubt. I've adapted a lot of it to manuscript format. I'll just have him talking in and italics. Okay, cool. Easy. That's an easy fix. I think the bigger thing, and Zikung's then man spends a lot of time. God, his description is so good. Like, Eli, like I have to say this literally might be one of my favorite written characters that I've read in these shows so far because you do such a good job of setting him up. I think if you're watching this as a viewer, this is a great example of how do you develop a unique character. So very great work on that, man. And like I said, there's definitely opportunities to cut down some of the descriptions a little bit, but those opportunities are more things that would happen as from like a line edit. The complex series of rapid eye darts, Z-King activated, 10 times magnification. Yep, so that's the same thing with capitalization. Yeah, and I think like when we do interiority like this, I think that works. I think just doing it all like that, Eli, is fine because we know he's by himself. It's clear he's talking. It's basically clear that it's his mind that he's thinking. I actually almost wonder whether italicizing his interiority is necessary. At least in this part, because right now he's by himself. The reader already knows that he's by himself, right? So I actually think right now this is clear. Okay, friend, just you, or do you have company? He couldn't see anyone else. Yeah, I actually don't even know if the italics are necessary when he's by himself, at least, because like this, it's clear. Under his that's it. And then you go into the description of the pistols. I love that you describe each of the pistols. So, and this was the next thing, because you're basically describing the pistols with the world building, and you're using the world building and the structure to create this really cool scheme around pistols. Let's see what. So I was on the fence about the way that you go about it. So first off, when you describe before you even get to the dial settings, I would just cut down the description on the pistols just a little bit. They're important. They absolutely are. I can tell. I want to get to the laser pistol, which I can tell is the most intriguing, and it's literally the best. It's like the thing you go hardcore in detail, which is cool. Get to the laser pistol sooner. Only because I don't want you to spend so much time describing all these things and for us to lose track of the present moment. So that would be my recommendation. Cut down on the descriptions of some of the pistols and the backstory just a little bit and spread out some of those descriptions a little later into the story. Get to the laser pistol because like that's the cool thing. I want to know more about the laser pistol. that he'd stolen off some drunk ex-Soviet scientist in Beijing. Like that's so interesting. Oh my God, I love it. Let's see. It's sort of like he doesn't notice. It will come up in the story later. So I wanted the reader to understand when it comes back to that, what's going. Okay, that's actually good to know. Thanks for that. Yeah, okay, cool. But the description of the laser pistol is super cool. So I'll keep the laser pistol stuff. I wasn't expecting a laser pistol, but it's a sci-fi. The laser pistol is the first thing that told me this is a sci-fi. In all honesty, like before it, I actually thought this was a Western. In the just setting up the character, I thought this was not a Western, but like a cowboy. No, not a Western. Kind of like a modern cowboy sort of vibe. That's what I got from the story until I got to the laser pistol. I'm like, oh, okay, so this is a little sci-fi. I wasn't opposed to it. I think it works right now, which is fun. This is like Western sci-fi Western, which is fun. Absolutely. The overall vibe of the story kind of gives me like what is it? It gives me a cross between like a Kill Bill, like a Quentin Tarantino type story crossed with a sci-fi. I kind of get the feeling of like if Quentin Tarantino did like one of his like action things, but it was in like a sci-fi setting. That's kind of the vibe I get of this. Okay, cool. That's really cool to know. That's awesome. Great writer. Let's see. And then so in terms of the dial settings itself, I'm kind of going back and forth. So Eli, the question that I want you to think about is first off, who is your readership? Who is, I actually haven't read A Scanner Darkly. I haven't, but I know it's always been on my to read list. So for this thing, so basically what you're doing, I love how you color coded it. I think the color coding is cool. The thing you're going to have to ask yourself though, and I don't know what, maybe you can, maybe you will, maybe you won't. You might not actually be able to color code it in a formatting. I think a couple things that you have to think about here, Eli, is first off, who is this? Who is the book for? Who is your audience, or who is your readership? One, and then B, how are you going to publish it? Because those are two huge factors when structuring. If you're going to submit this through like an Amazon, like you're going to self-publish it, you need to look if you're even able to do the coloring things. Maybe you can, if like that'd be awesome, but you might not be able to. As such, you should be aware of that, just so you don't put all the effort into like doing this color coding thing, but then not actually be able to publish it in that more format. Or if you're just publishing it, like you're going to do it online, then through like a blog or something, like that would be different, right? So something like this, it almost makes you think of like, you might have to think of like another way on how to publish it, so that way readers can fully engage with the style that you're trying to set up. It's not even that. Like, I wouldn't even say it's like a clout thing. I would just say it's more like a structuring of like, if you want to do the color coding thing, find a way to do it, right? If you're like, you know what, the color coding thing is cool, like you just have to find the right way to publish it, right? So like the self-publishing might not be the route because of the specific style. You might need to find a specific type of publishing house who can do this type of publishing. That would be my thing. My target audience. Okay, cool. Yep. Dune fans. And then, so beyond the color coding, so the dial had 4 settings. And so this was for me, so I could pronounce them. I like that. So this is what I would recommend. So I like that it's in a different language, and you're basically doing it because the protagonist doesn't understand what the language are. I think what I would say, yes, let's see, glad you put up a good, yes, I feel like all the submissions are always nice. Yep, you can always rewatch. Let's see, so the dial had 4 settings. And you're basically doing it because he doesn't understand the language as well, per se. Like, it's a struggle. What I would say is I would call this out beforehand. The gun, I would call it the language. The language on this gun was the language on this gun was Russian. I mean, you called out that he had gotten it from a Russian earlier, but I would just call out the language. The dial had 4 settings. Had 4 settings listed in Russian. Had 4 settings listed in Russian. This is just an example. Word it however you will. The dial had 4 settings listed in Russian. He had to learn how to pronounce them. Something like that. I would call that out beforehand, so that way the reader is clear, right? You've already said that he stole it from a Russian, which is great. And this might just be subjective on my part, but I'm just trying to think of like, how do I make it easy for a reader? So like when I think about the story itself, essentially it's going to look like this, right? Because I know you added that for my benefit, which was great. And then you did this in parentheses, which is beautiful. These equated at 50, 25, and 1 shot. Getting hit at the blink setting was basically like getting shot with a 9mm round, except for there wasn't much in the way of ballistics involved. Perfect. Because essentially, since the average reader isn't going to understand these words, so essentially every single time you mention it, I think the color coding is actually brilliant. I think it's a really smart way of doing it. And basically, like every single time you mention it, you're going to have to give the reader an image, a specific visual of what happens when this is mentioned. So like, I think it's cool. I think it's a challenge, but I think it's really cool. Exactly. So that way it just makes it a little clearer, especially if you're going to keep doing this throughout the story. I just didn't want someone sharp to be like, how would he know how many shots he had left? Yeah, I mean, that makes sense, right? I mean, you can call out, right, that he had to work to understand. Like, you've set up that he stole it from a Russian, but like you would have to, you could just say it to the reader of like, yeah, he knows how to use the gun because he Googled them or he researched them or whatever. So that way we know that he's able to use the gun correctly. And I like that, right? So at Sefna, it was like getting hit with a shot from a rifle. I think that's good. I think with this, I would almost go into I don't know what a 9mm round is, personally, but maybe your average reader will. You said this is for fans of Dune, so sci-fi fans. Anyone who's played a video game might know. Anybody who's a gun person might know. I think I would change the description to be like, if it's like getting shot, it's like getting shot with a pistol. That would make more sense for me. This one, it says it was like getting shot with a shot from a rifle. That's clear. I know what a rifle is. Just a recommendation. You said this one was once like a charging bison. Okay, cool. So this one's used to kill animals. He had only ever shot one, and that was a derelict old tour bus, and it had exploded. Perfect. This one's like the exploding one. The red one's the exploding one. Cool. And that's the thing. I like the color coding. I think you just need to find a way to. I think you just need to find the right publishing format for it. In all honesty, I would try to keep the color. I would try to find a way to make the color coding work if at all possible. However you end up publishing it. That's cool. Person be vaporized instantly. And his interiority is so much fun. Oh my God, I love this interiority. Yeah, and if you've already set up that he knows how to use the gun or he's like learned the language, then it will be clear to the reader that he understands it. All right, so basically this you're basically using so that way he knows how to read the gun. Are these different words than these ones? Shot. So is that a different word than the other one, or is that the same word? Yeah, that's the same word. Okay. So he'd used up 4 of them, testing how many shots he got on each setting. I think what I would suggest, Eli, to just make this clear, right now I'm a little confused by it. And I think the reason why is because I thought, okay, so bear with me. So you're basically saying like, this word is the name of a setting. That's what this word means, kill setting. Whereas this thing you're now saying means the number of shots on it, but it also means the type of the setting. So I think right now, just the way that it's described is just a little confusing to me. Color coded. Yeah, I think it's just more accessible gun description. They're all the same. The color coding is cool. The Russians didn't put 50, 25, 1. They wrote descriptions of power because it's a prototype. Yeah, I get that. Yeah, I think. I think what I would suggest, Eli, is I would say think through this. I think you just got to make a way to make this a little more clear. Because right now, if I'm confused, that means there'll be other people out there who would be confused when reading it. Because right now, I was clear up until you got to the setting bit. And right now, to me, this means this is what the setting is called. The name of the setting is, these equated to 525. These equated to 50, 25, and 1. Okay, so this is the number. The dial had 4 settings listing in Russian. He had to learn how to pronounce them. So right now, I think that this is the name of the setting. These equated to 50, 25, and 1. Okay, so this means 50. And this, so 50, 25, and 1 shot. Okay. Okay, no, I'm clear. But then this, you're saying default, middle, serious, and annihilation. Gotcha. So it's meaning the type of damage that it does. So 50, 20, 5, and 1. I don't think you need this one. I get actually why, because you're using it, but you literally just described what these mean up here with killing the animals. I would actually save this for when he uses the shots later in the story, because I think this just adds unnecessary description to it. Right now, 50, 20, 5, and 1. And you've described them, that the 50 is like the pistol, the 20, I think, is like the shotgun. I forgot what the 5 was, and then the 1's like a bomb. So I think that would clean it up a little bit. The other 2 sells them and spend the course of duty. Perfect. And this is perfect. This so easy right there. So easy. Absolutely. I would actually I would have this earlier in the thing. I would have this at the very beginning. H40, C16, C4, Y0. This was the amount on each thing, right? This is so clear. I'm like, okay, this is how many shots you have. As a gamer, as a reader, that makes sense to me. Yeah, and I mean, I think it's interesting. It's just because it's kind of a complex idea. It takes some work to make sure that it's clear enough for the reader as well. Let's see. And then what do we got here? And then I think beyond that, I think I would just, after the gun description, I think I would get back to because you go to the superbike. I think once you've described the gun, I would go back to the present moment a little sooner. So after the gun setup, I would go back to him watching the train just a little sooner. So that way we stay grounded in the present moment. That would be a recommendation. So that way, because you've done such a good job on character description, because I know you're about to go to the bike, I would go like, all right, the truck was passing by, and then to the bike, only so that way you don't chance losing the reader through too much description. Let's see. But other than that, though, Eli, that was a really cool story. Once again, I think the story is super cool. I know I definitely went way over time in that one, but definitely a really cool story because it has such a unique vibe to it. There's definitely some really good work into it, but like really cool. I think that definitely has the opportunity to do really, really well. Absolutely. Let's see. Okay, Viganza, and can anchor them. Perfect. So I can tell that you get it. You know, like maybe you don't even need the non-gun weapons paragraph. Possibly. Oh, no. This isn't even pushing back at all. These are great questions. Like you should ask questions because I want to make sure that you understand what I'm saying. Yeah, everything you're saying is great. Absolutely. I like all my feedbacks and commentary are because I think your story is super awesome and I want your story to be as incredible as possible. You have a unique world, a unique character, and you're taking a unique structural approach, which is difficult, but it can be done well. I can tell you're close, but you just have to keep fine tuning it. So that way the reader is on board. Absolutely. So super cool. Thanks for sharing that, Eli. That was a fun story. Very, very fun. Super cool. Thanks for sharing that. Awesome. And then definitely if you go back and rewatch the replay and something doesn't make sense, definitely make sure to let me know. Let me know if you have any additional questions or something's confusing. I'd be always happy to answer any questions for you. Awesome. And then I see that Nil, I see that you had a couple questions here on the formatting. Let's see, let me pull back up. So now I know you mentioned using large font Comic Sans to be easier to read. I try to ignore the meme vibe of Comic Sans. Might be alone, but my view is it does have some effect on me appreciating the prose. Interesting. You know, no, that's actually not something I've thought about before, but that's actually a really interesting that's a really good point. I haven't had, you're the first to bring that up. I know that I've done Comic Sans simply to make it easier to read. But from like a prose standpoint, that's not something that I've thought about. I think maybe what I'll do is I'll post some I'll put some polls out to the community and kind of see how the community feels. Like if more people are like, hey, you know what, Comic Sans is easier to read, or if it detracts from the prose, I'm fine with changing it. That's the font style of it is less to me, it's not that big of a deal. At the end of the day, I want to make it as easy and as engaging for y'all to read. So that's actually great feedback. Thanks for sharing that. Let's say, I think the document window should be larger, so closer to normal font spacing with allowing it to be visible, but do what's best for you, the group. And I think the document window should be larger. So you're saying like usually when, oh, that's not a good look. So you're saying usually when I had the story like this, so you think like the document window should still be larger than this? I was like, I think even here, I think this is the largest I can get it without getting rid of the description and the time, right? So I played around with a couple of different ways of formatting, but that's absolutely some great feedback. Thanks for that. I'm always open to trying new things if there's ways to enjoy or appreciate the reading more. So that's super awesome. Sweet. Yeah, absolutely, man. Looking forward to it. I've always loved reading different sections of the story. It's fun for me to see the acrylic characters in Comic Sans. I was like, I mean, maybe I can try changing up the format in the future, kind of play around with it and see what works. Yeah, it was just interesting because I think most, at least according to Google, the majority of writers use Comic Sans when working on rough drafts of their story because it's easiest to read on the eyes. But from a view from like a reading perspective, from like a live stream format, maybe there'll be another font style that's actually more effective, at least in terms of serving the story. It's not something that I've thought about recently, but I'm going to do some research and look into it. So absolutely really great feedback. Awesome. All right, who do we got on deck? We got Jessica. Jessica, I got your story here on deck. Dead Weight by Jessica Bell. All right, so I'm going to pull up your story, Jessica. Awesome. So Jessica, while I get your story pulled up, let's see, let me check comments. Yeah, I was like, I went for it when I was formatting the show. I went for it because I'm like, well, what's the easiest thing to read? Because I want people to be able to see it clearly. Especially because I think 60 to 70% of you are watching this from a phone, and then 20 to 30% of you are watching from a desktop. If you're watching from a desktop, I know you can see it, or even from a TV, I know you can see the things. But it's because the greater portion of you watch from your phone. I think of like, okay, if it's on a phone, I want it to be at least from a good enough size font so that way you can see it while I'm doing the read through. That's kind of my thinking. Let's see, Marcella. I know you said the excerpt can only be up to 5 pages maximum. Since I'll likely send some character pics as well, would that count for the page count, or can it be in addition to the excerpt? Marcella, so that's a great question. So the excerpt, you can send me whatever length that you want. I generally say about 5 pages because that's about how much I can get through in about a 10-minute reading. So you kind of just want to ask yourself, like, however much reading I can get through in 10 minutes, I'll get through. Clearly, I go over time on some of the critiques, and I have to be better about that to be fair to everyone. But yeah, it's basically what I can get through. Absolutely. So great question. Yeah, and I think the character pieces will be super cool. So I'd say don't worry about the word count or don't worry about the page count. Just think more about like whatever you think I can read in 10 minutes. And then with the character pictures, I'll make sure to find a way to show them on the screen so that way the reader and myself can enjoy them as we're watching the story. Great question. And by the way, time for me to advertise the Easy Edit tool. If you haven't had the chance yet to go check out, I've developed a brand new tool for writers to make the editing process easier. I need to get my the link. I should have had the link pulled up. So essentially this editing tool, it's designed to help you edit your story, edit early drafts of your story. It'll save you time in the long run. It'll save you money in the long run with an editor. And it's like a short tool to just help with the editing process. I basically distilled my knowledge over the past, 6 months of doing the story and critique show into like a short editing tool with some common practices that I see consistently throughout structure, world building, character, plot, and dialogue. It may pertain to your story, it may not, but it's a really great tool. It's absolutely free, does not cost at all. And I'm going to drop the link when I open this up. Make sure that if you want a copy of the tool, you can follow the link here and subscribe. I launched it as part of the first part of my new Art of Writing newsletter. So make sure to go check it out. It's really cool. Give some great examples on world building. I try to do different examples, and then I'll give examples of how I would go about fixing it. So really, really cool. Definitely go check it out if you struggle with editing or you want something that's super easy for you to use when you're working on your story. All right, beautiful. So I got that, and then let's pull up Jessica's story. All right. All right, and I am all set on my end. That's not what we want. Let's add. Perfect. All right, Jessica, and I am all set. So right now we got 20 minutes on the clock. All right. Deadweight by Jessica Bell. Here I was, stuck on an elevator with the one person on this planet that I literally had to file papers to get away from. I didn't want to argue. I tipped my head back, dropped my shoulders, and took a deep breath. The chances we would arrive at the same time were slim. And the chances of the elevator breaking down while we were both in it were even slimmer. Yet, here we were. The old elevator had a certain odor. You know the smell where you aren't sure if it's just old and dirty or if some rank person just spent the last hour perspiring all over the place. The smell was like a musty, moldy old rug in your grandma's forgotten, leaky basement bathroom. The smell of stale cigarettes and cheap perfume, but maybe that was just her. I took another deep breath and slowly let it out, trying to breathe through my mouth. I sighed and closed my eyes for a moment. What? She sneered at me. What is it now? Shit. Nothing. I opened my eyes and looked at the worn out floor. I just could use a cigarette right about now, I confessed, glancing up at the flickering elevator light. Oh, great. There's power on this death trap. Maybe it won't be too much longer before someone gets us out of here. Oh, God, please, just get me out of here. Of course, I knew you're not going to quit. This is why I left you. You can't commit to anything to better yourself. She took her phone out and held it up as high as she could, as if she was going to get some damn signal from the heavens. I did quit smoking, but I wasn't going to tell her that. I quit a lot of things, like spending time with nagging, spoiled partners. I even got a promotion. But why tell her that and give her the satisfaction that maybe she was the one that fixed me? And for the record, I was the one who packed her bags and had her go when I found out she was cheating on me. I put my hands behind me on the safety bar. I could feel the grainy layers of grime. Ugh. I immediately pulled my hands back and shook them, placing them in my pockets. My whole body quivered when I thought about the years of back alley aides, infested souls that came crawling through here. But this was her idea. It was her idea to come here and throw our son's farewell party and wish him off to the Peace Corps at this place. Why here? I would never know. Offered to pay for a nice pavilion at my club, but she wouldn't accept it. You know, my new husband paid a good deposit for this place. She would think the elevator would work, she said. Yeah, you would think. I try not to roll my eyes, but I was never good at being an adult when it came to these things. I blame my immaturity on her presence. You know you are going to have to see me again when he gets married, right? She gave up looking for a signal and put her phone back in her purse. Yeah, that's a bit far away to think about, considering he hasn't even been dating anybody. I could feel my hands getting sweaty in my pockets. The smell, the heat, and her bitching made me want to vomit all over her new Louis Vuitton bag. I could almost taste the shot of whiskey that was upstairs waiting for me. Oh, I imagined it hitting my lips and burning my tongue all the way down my throat, right in my empty stomach. Oh. Of course, he's not dating now, but just give it a month. I'm sure he'll find somebody. This is your fault for putting this idea of the Peace Corps in his head. After he gets an associate, he could be going on to get his advanced degree, not spending time God knows where. I could see her knees buckling. We had been in there for nearly an hour now. The bickering and pauses of silence that had slowly eaten up time were becoming too much. I almost pulled my phone out to play Tetris, but I knew that would piss her off more. She continued her little rant. I guess this is the advice I would expect from someone who has been sitting at the same desk for 15 years. She folded her arms, dangling her perfect manicured hands and her big shiny new ring on her devil claws. We both jumped when we heard a thud and voices on the outside. Finally. As much as I wanted to be out of here and bathe in a pool of sanitizer and burn my clothes, the elevator had grown on me. This little box had seen and heard all kinds of disturbing things. I glanced at her. Really disturbing things. End reading. Ooh, oh, that was awesome. That's super cool, actually. So I think what I really liked the character descriptions in there. I feel like, Jessica, you did a good job of setting up a very clear, what's the word? A very clear obstacle between the two characters, right? Who it looks like they used to be partners before with their son. You have the one character who's our main character who's has a love for alcohol, kind of wants to keep things, seems like mellow, doesn't want to argue, maybe gets annoyed easily, wants to get out of this elevator. And then you have the other partner who's kind of like a prima donna, seems like, with her very like high fashion, very like fashionable, wearing like the Louis Vuitton. Clearly, they have extremely clearly opposing viewpoints. You could tell why they probably didn't work together, why they didn't work out. So I would say that the character development was actually super cool in this piece. I really liked how you went about describing the characters. I would say the character and the plot worked out very, very well. So really great work on that. I definitely have a sense of who the two characters are. I have a little bit more sense of the other lady. I was like, I don't know if I got their names, which I think was probably intentional. So that was cool. I think that worked very well. I think the opportunities from it would be probably a little bit on just like on structuring some of the dialogue, making that just a little clearer, and then cleaning up. So I'd say probably like the dialogue and the structure is where this story would benefit the most. Yeah, that's a good point. That opening line is powerful, packs a lot of punch, and sort of tells the whole story in one amazing distilled sentence. Absolutely agree. Yep. Absolutely agree. I think the opening worked out so well. And this is why like the plot works. Like you can already tell, like, yeah, this is what the story is about. Just being stuck in an elevator with the last person on earth that you want to be with. Like that's nobody wants to be in that situation. And this is a great thing that almost anybody can relate with. So that was awesome. And I love that basically you do a great job of setting up the world, which is basically them stuck in an elevator, and you're using the smell, which is great. Like perfect. Right. The smell was like a musty old rug. It was like a musty, moldy old rug in your grandma's forgotten leaky basement bathroom. Like, that was hilarious. Like, great job on your description there, my friend. That was great. So that was awesome. I loved how you set up the world. You basically you set up the you get the world, plot, and the world both work very well. Good job. So I can close my eyes for a moment. Thank you. It's for an assignment. I've never done flash fiction before, but it was fun. Yeah, and I could tell that you definitely had fun writing this. Okay, so some of the dialogue works well. It's like this, what? She sneered at me. What is it now? This speaks volumes about her character, and you do this in a single line. Perfect. Perfect. This opening section was so great. I took another deep breath and slowly let it out, trying to breathe through my mouth. I sighed and closed my eyes for a moment. What? She sneered at me. What is it now? Shit. That's so clear. This is a clear character development here for her. This is a clear character development for the protagonist. Great work on that part. Let's see. Nothing. I opened my eyes and looked at the worn out floor. So that's good. Just make sure with dialogue, Jessica, that we always do you do a comma like that for clarity. Anytime that you include a speech tag or an action that's happening. Other than that was good. By the way, what's up, Marta? Welcome to the stream. Welcome. Let's see. By the way, Marta, make sure that you check out the earlier piece. We had a historical fiction take place in Poland. Might be your type of story. Okay. And then we could say I could just use a cigarette right about now. Let's see. I confess glancing up at the flickering elevator light. Oh, great. There's power. So this is good. This is more world building. I like that. And the cigarette is perfect. And I think I only got lost just from the formatting. Like that was kind of on me for not checking that. So like this is how it would have been. This would nothing. I opened my eyes and looked at the worn out floor. I could use a cigarette right about now. I confessed. Glancing. Wait. So the worn out floor. So I think this is the same character, right? Nothing. I opened my eyes and looked out. What? So she says this. Protagonist is this. I confessed. So this is the protagonist. So I think it should go like this actually. There we go. Which means that would go like this. So I think that was just a formatting. Oh, great. There's power. That's great. This is great development. And then I'm pretty sure this was her. She took her phone out and held it up as high as she could. So I think it just, it could have been a formatting issue on my part. I think this is just making some of this clear. Like, of course, this was her speaking. Of course, I knew you're not going to quit. This is why I left you. You can't commit to anything to better yourself. Perfect. Great development. Awesome. I did quit smoking, but I wasn't going to tell her that. I quit a lot of things. I like that. This is a great development and what happened. You're basically showing us through her interiority of what happened. I love that. And then we do a little bit more world building. That works. And then now we get to the plot. It was her idea to come here and throw her son's farewell. I might, if I were to edit this, I might actually throw up the son's farewell party. I might put it up a little sooner in the story, just so that way I'm clear on why they're in the elevator halfway through. So I would just put this a little sooner. Yeah. So this is good. And then once again, that should be dialogue. Once again, that should be like that. Perfect. You would think. I blame my immaturity on her presence. That's funny. Jessica, you do a really good job of making the character, our protagonist, feel very unique without us knowing her name, which is fun. This rivalry, this like the tension between these two is very, very apparent. You know you're going to have to see me again when he gets married, right? That's funny. And then we touch upon the alcohol here, right? So clearly our protagonist has a thing for alcohol, which is good. That's really great character development. We go from her hatred to the partner and her fashion sense to this need for alcohol to deal with the problem, which is great. Yeah, I think the rest of this description is good. I think I just fixed things like punctuation for quotation marks and dialogue. And the really disturbing things. So the thing that this made me ask was because technically they'd been in there for a while. So like the only thing I would recommend, Jessica, is because you had said that she had said really disturbing things. What things did she say specifically that had been disturbing? Because so far it feels like from at least this section, what we've seen, she said some annoying and mean things, but she said nothing disturbing. So I would almost end this on her saying something really disturbing. So that way this makes a little bit more sense. Or alternatively, having the protagonist reacting at the beginning to something disturbing she just said. Right. So maybe she said it right before the story starts. And then this is kind of what puts her on edge because this fashionable partner said something extremely disturbing. And you could kind of use that as an intrigue with and not actually really touch on what it was that she said that was disturbing. And then ending this piece would probably help on and then the elevator doors opened or them arriving. You basically said that they got to it and we jumped, we heard a thud and voices on the outside. I think just make it a little clearer for me that the elevator is fixed because this is the elevator ride. So yeah, but other than that, like especially like you did this as assignment as a flash fiction piece, like really great work. You did a good work. You developed characters, you developed a world, you developed a plot, you did dialogue, and the structure is something that's always easily fixable. So really great work on that. I should have clarified. I wrote seen and heard, but I think you're right. In my head, he just saw something disturbing. Right. Really, really great work. Something else that I might add to it, I might give the main character a little description. Uh, um, I fully understand the character's personality, but I have no clue what your protagonist looks like. Something else to think about as I kind of just thought about that because I realized your protagonist mentions her a lot. And it's like, yeah, clearly she's this fashionable. Maybe if she like mentioned like, oh, are you going to wear that? Are you going to wear that extra like that raggedy suit like you always do or something? I think would help a little bit as well. So that way I can get a clear sense of what your protagonist looks like. So let's see, Glide actually. So let me pull up some of this chat. Thanks. I think I've been in this elevator before. Yeah, I was like, nobody wants to be in this type of elevator ride. Yeah, so you're saying that you think like the change, it probably was. It probably was from the font changes. When I changed the formatting, I needed to do a better job of pre-checking the story and make sure that it actually lines up. That was a me problem. That's why it got cut off. That was a me problem. I'll do a better job of that in the future. And Jessica, this is why the story works well because it's an easily relatable situation. When you put two characters in an elevator who don't want to be together, the reader immediately thinks of the person they don't like and a person they do not want to be trapped in an elevator with. So you're kind of using reverse psychology in this type of story to pull the readers into the story. Really, really great work. Great choice, actually. Really great choice. And I think the way you go about the story works well. I know, devil claws. I was like, I love the description. Devil claws, but like it's like her jewelry, like such a brilliant way of describing such a normal, like mundane character. Awesome. Absolutely agreed. So yeah, that's all that I got for you, Jessica. Really great piece. Thanks for sharing. Awesome. So that was absolutely awesome. Let's see. Yep, and Glide said that as well. Yeah, I second Jared. Character description is fantastic. The internal dialogue is hilarious. So yeah, overall, thanks for sharing. Really cool, cool little short story. I don't get flash fiction pieces as much, so that was fun. Jessica, you should definitely like do some of the edits for it, clean it up, and go submit it to magazines. In the description, I have the KaleidoScript Magazine. You should follow the link and submit. They're accepting issues for their next story. Go put it up in magazines. Like flash fiction is an easy one to submit to stories, and the editing portions of it doesn't really need that much work. So that's what I would recommend. You should put it out there because it's a cool story. I also wanted to comment on, I saw in my critique, I saw, let's see, Eli. I know Eli and Glad you were talking about, Eli, your story for a second from the previous reading. I know, Eli, you were saying, I feel like my biggest hurdle in writing was wanting to flex my muscle all the time, use superflower language always, but understatement is much more powerful. Exactly. So I think this is a good call out because then Eli, or Glad you said, Eli, I know how that feels, but your writing works. Thanks for sharing your piece. And yeah, Eli, I just want to call out that your writing does work. And I think all of the recommendations are things that any writer goes through when they're refining their story. Like what you went to achieve with your story so far with the description was impressive. So I really was trying to compliment Jessica. Oh, that's really sweet. Yeah, because Jessica, you used a lot of understatement in your story, with a mix of description, and you did it really well. It's a cool flash fiction story. I hope you put it in a magazine or a journal. In all honesty, I think that'd be super sweet. Her writing was simple but powerful. Thanks for stopping by, Marta. Awesome. So with that reading out of the way, let's see. So we're just approaching the 3-hour mark. It's going to be time. So my voice is a little worn, which means it's time for me to hop in a writing sprint. But if you're looking for something to watch, make sure to watch next. Down in the description of the YouTube video is the playlist, the Reading Sprints for Storytellers. It's some of the other story and critique shows. Definitely go check out some of the most popular episodes. There's some really great stuff in there. Every single episode has great story excerpts. And some of them, I'm sure you'll probably recognize previous excerpts from some of the stories we touched on today. So definitely go check out the playlist if you're looking for something to watch next. Otherwise, it's time to hop into our writing sprint. I got some fun times with Last Scarecrow. Feel free to join along if you're like, hey, I'm feeling super creative. You want to get some writing done with me? 20 minutes, super easy. Or if you're like, hey, I want to kick back, you can always sit back and watch vicariously as all right for the both of us. All right, so let me pull up Last Scarecrow. All right, and I got it all set on my end. Oh, that's right. I need to pull up my music as well. Let's get the music going. You're up. I'm actually very intense story, so All right, so I'm all set on my end. Let me pull up the synopsis. Okay, so right now we are just hit chapter 39, The Last Magic. Oof, so we're about 74% of the way into the story right now. We got some crazy stuff going on. Let's see. Scarecrow learns the truth. Scarecrow learns the truth about the... let's see. Scarecrow learns the truth about the... What am I going to say? He learns the truth about the magic ability that was hidden by the last creator. Scarecrow learns the truth about the magic ability that was hidden by the last creator. Awesome. So for those of you who weren't here yesterday, we went through some really oh my god. We're kind of at that point in the story where they finally found the magic power he's been looking for, and now he's about to go and do a dream into a vision sequence. Okay. All right, I got 20 minutes on the clock. I am all ready, and it's time to write now. All right, and that is our writing time. That is the writing sprint. Okay. That was good. Good little writing sprint. So that was interesting with what I accomplished on that section. So I'm basically setting up the backstory of where is the last magic, which is basically what Scarecrow has been hunting for the last like 50% of the story, which it was set on as a quest by the last robot, who the last time we had actually seen this memory, which was much earlier on in the story, we saw the moment with the last robot and this man in the trench coat basically confronted by other characters who basically blamed him for all of their mistakes, as the world and the environment itself was basically, it looked like it was falling apart. So we got to see that. We saw the introduction of the first demon in that memory as well. But the demon at the time was an infant. So we saw a very gruesome scene. And this is the next scene that we're seeing. That is a memory of that era, of which the timing of that era is still I haven't talked about yet. I very wanted to keep the feeling a little timeless. So I'm good with what I've set up so far. Basically, this creator, the man in the trench coat, kind of riding into this graveyard with the staff, which he had previously on his back, and that's kind of where we're at. I'm kind of playing around with like I know that I need to do a little more character development for whoever this trench coat man is. I know I need to do that. I'm thinking through what's the way that I want to navigate this part of the story and what I want to reveal that's revealing something cool without revealing too much. So I have a lot of big reveals coming up. So we'll get to determine that over the next couple of days. All right. So great writing sprint. I hope you were able to get some writing done yourself. I felt very successful. We definitely got some great writing in. We got some great storytelling in. We definitely touched upon some great stories. And yeah, make sure that if you missed out on any of the stories today, that you go back and watch the replay on some of the stories that you missed out. I saw Sean, I saw you hopped in the stream, and yours was one of the scripts that I touched on a little earlier. So glad you were able to stop by, my friend. All right. And as I look towards creative writing on the morrow, so I'll be bringing back the next show of story time. It'll be a very casual experience. Come, bring some milk and cookies, sit back, and I'm going to do another live reading of the next chapter of Fourth Wing. Now, apparently from the comments, a lot of people don't actually like the story. So it's interesting. I'm intrigued so far, but it's only the first chapter and there's some opportunities for it. So we'll see whether or not this next chapter is better or not. It'll be fun. We're going to sit down. Maybe I'll make a pillow for it. We'll see what happens. So this is the new segment, story time. Whether or not I go through the full Fourth Wing book is still to be determined. I might just do like beginnings of books, of like popular books. I'm still kind of figuring out how I want to go about the format. But for tomorrow, it'll be a super fun reading. So if you want to just come and listen to a published book from a best-selling author, come join me, and we'll see. As the question I pose is, Fourth Wing a good book, or based on the community feedback, does it suck? Dun dun dun. We'll find out tomorrow, 2 p.m. Mountain Time. I'll be here, so come join me. And that is all that I got for you today, writers. Don't forget, tap that like button on your way out. Let me know that you got some value. Help us show the algorithm that this was an engaging stream. And don't forget, words are wind, but stories are forever. I'm Kaufman, and I'll catch you on the morrow. Stay creative, my friends. Thanks for dropping by today.